There's a question from the gallery. Yes.
It seems like the agenda is structured based on various comments about the whole master.
Parents for Parks and Rec. We are looking forward to the town's final sign-off on the Parks and Recreation Plan in February. We hope that after completing this expensive multi-year master planning process, our town leaders will begin to take action on plan recommendations within the next 6 to 12 months. We have put together our list of action items for this time period in hopes it can shed light on what many families in Tiburon would find helpful. This officer would issue citations. Number 5, install a picnic table and ADA compliant entrance at Bel Air Park in conjunction with the drainage work that will take place there in summer 2025. Commit to regular maintenance. And 6, create a map of the town's public trails, parks, and recreational spaces and post it on the town's website and in the parks. How much time do I have left?
2 minutes roughly. 2 minutes roughly.
Thank you. And then briefly, the longer term action items. In addition to the short-term action items listed above, we want to ensure longer term items remain in the discussion. So we understand the master plan is meant to guide the town's decision-making for the next decade, if not longer. We have proposed timelines for each of these items that are rough, obviously. So install, number 1, install a stand-up paddleboard / kayak launch, hopefully within the next 1 to 3 years. Number 2, create a nature-based playscape and shaded picnic area in Lineal Park, ideally in the hilly spot near Blackie's pasture and the bathrooms, hopefully within the next 1 to 2 years. 1 to 3 years. I'll stop numbering them. Add shaded seating, benches, and hammocks throughout Lineal Park, especially around the beach area and Blackie's pasture. Next, if the patrolling pilot project is successful at Old Rail Trail, add hours to the patrol to improve the safety of the Old Rail Trail for pedestrians. Next, build the inclusive play area at Zielinski Park if the opportunity arises. This could be combined with some of the housing element, requirements coming down the pipeline. Next, make improvements to Belveron Park. Next, update the playgrounds at south of Knoll Park, South Knoll in Lineal Park. Next, build a community pool, obviously a longer term project that we would hope could be achievable within the next 5 to 10 years. And finally, explore additional opportunities for creating public spaces that can foster good health and community building. This could include the creation of a community center. So this is the final, the final summary. We are advocating for a better park system in Tiburon for critical reasons. A loneliness epidemic is plaguing our country. A mental health crisis is having devastating effects among our youth. Digital screens are taking over our lives and leading people to stay isolated indoors. Parks and other public spaces play a vital role in tackling these serious problems. They provide opportunities for people to get outside and support their physical and mental health. They provide spaces where residents can meet and connect with each other, in turn fostering a sense of belonging. They strengthen the fabric of our community and help us all become healthier, happier, and more resilient. We appreciate all of your work toward improving our parks and recreation system and making Tiburon the best it can be for everyone. Please reach out anytime if we can be of service. And thank you so much for everything you do for us.
Thanks, Chelsea. Appreciate you. Are there any other comments at this time on agenda items that are not, pardon me, on any items that are not on the agenda?
I see none online.
Okay, great. So we will close that item and move forward to commission and staff briefings. And maybe on that, David, you could maybe mention other presentation items that maybe were going to be held today and that were not, if you could.
Yes, Chair Hornbrook, we were anticipating to provide a presentation from the Tiburon Police Department. Their presentation was aimed at providing input on enforcement of electric mobility devices and safety on the Old Rail Trail and around town. That presentation will be moved to our March meeting from the Tiburon Police Department. So please come to that meeting. You'll be getting a year-end update on what Tiburon Police Department has been doing since we passed our electric mobility device ordinance last April. So they'll provide an update on speed and traffic issues, specifically along the Old Rail Trail and throughout town itself.
Great. Thanks, David. I appreciate it. All right. If there's any other commission and staff briefings, I see none. We'll go on to the next item, which is approving the minutes from our December 16th, 2024 meeting. I reviewed those, and does anybody else have any changes or?
No,
Then I would love a motion.
I would make a motion to approve the minutes from December 16th, 2024. Second.
Thank you, Mike.
We'll take roll. Chair Hornbrook,
Yes.
Vice Chair Moon,
Yes.
Commissioner Burr,
Yes.
and Commissioner Judge.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Terrific. Thank you all. So the next item is presentation items. And I believe we have a guest from the Tiburon Public Works Department.
Thank you, Chair, Commissioners, members of the public here at Chambers and listening online. This evening, we have Patrick Kerslake, who is our Operations Manager for the Department of Public Works. He deals with everything outside the office. He's got the hard job and the fun job. So he's here this evening to provide the commission and the residents here of Tiburon what the Operations Department has worked on last year, and including a lot of projects that carried over into this year because we go by fiscal year here, and provide also detailed explanations on how staff is divided amongst the different divisions within his department. We have the parks and the streets and the storm drain. So he'll give an overview of what the operations department has been working on and doing this past year. So we have Patrick Kerslake here. I'll get the presentation up and ready for you.
And then also, Patrick, as you go through your slides, I see that there's a lot of material. If you're like, oh, that's in the next slide, or if you feel like you need to get through, don't feel like you have to do every one of your slides since there's 38 of them.
We'll move pretty quickly. A lot of them contain photos
All right,
and
cool.
of some of the exciting work we're doing out there. So good evening, everyone, and thanks for having us tonight in the meeting. Again, my name is Patrick Kerslake. I run the Maintenance and Operations Division within the Department of Public Works and supervise the folks that are responsible for performing all the day-to-day maintenance out in our parks and our streets, our facilities, and just about everything else that the town is responsible for maintaining. I'm going to move quickly through a lot of these slides, but it will hopefully give everybody a bit of an idea of how our division is structured and our areas of normal responsibility. This is a quick outline of what we're going to talk about this evening. So David's division is the Engineering and Administration Division, comprised of 2 FTEs, David and an engineering technician and inspector. And on my side of the house, there are 8 FTEs. We work out of the Public Works Corporation Yard behind Reed School. And we have 3 divisions, the Streets Division, Parks Division, and the Facilities Division, with 3 members in the Streets Division, 3 members in the Parks Division, and the Facilities Division having just 1 full-time employee. And again, of this, the operations and maintenance side, especially within the Parks Division, the work is supplemented by outside contractors who perform contract work related to maintenance and some repairs that are too large for the department to handle themselves. I'm not going to read all this, but it provides a brief overview of engineering and administration. And this presentation is online as well for anybody to review at their leisure. And again, the photos in this are some recent projects that we completed. This one is a couple years old now, but it was the replanking of the ferry dock downtown that the town is responsible for operating and maintaining. I'll just briefly go over what the Streets Division is responsible for. 65 lane miles of streets, a pretty complex network of storm drains, catch basins, pipes, and drainage channels that convey stormwater from all of the streets and town maintained parcels into the bay. They also maintain streetlights, street signs, parking lots, and there's a shared responsibility for the maintenance of trails and paths within the neighborhoods. The Parks Division, I know there's probably been a heavy emphasis on explaining and categorizing all of the different areas of maintenance within the Parks Division, so I won't go into this too much in depth, but the Parks Division is comprised of 2 maintenance workers and a senior maintenance worker, and they perform all of the day-to-day maintenance in all of the town parks and green spaces, medians, and other areas, and all of the infrastructure within these areas. And see some of the projects that they had been working on recently. A couple of them are a couple of years old now. The installation of the plaques on the bottom left, some turf maintenance, and some other larger vegetation clearing projects that the Parks Division helped out in the open space. I think this one's out of order. My apologies. Another large responsibility of the Department of Public Works is storm response. So we have folks during the winter months who are on call and who are responsible to respond to town during storm events, any time of the day or night, to ensure that the storm drain collection system is working properly and to respond to any other call outs involving trees that fall into roadways or any other types of hazards that may need to be mitigated. We also get to have some fun showing off all of our heavy equipment, trucks and toys to local school children through a couple of events that we participate in every year. This is a presentation at a local preschool where we brought a piece of heavy equipment in a dump truck, and we also brought a police car, but we think that we had the coolest stuff there. So that was really well received and helped to explain to folks what it is Public Works is responsible for. And another community oriented event that we co-sponsor with Tiburon Fire Protection District is our annual Chipper Days that are held at Blackie's Pasture, where we collect fire fuel or vegetative waste to incentivize folks to reduce fire fuel loads in their yards and to maintain the space around their properties. This is a pile of debris that was dumped over just one Saturday from a group of property owners throughout the town that brought material to be disposed of. More infrastructure that the town is responsible for that sometimes folks may not think about. Elements such as the Coming About Fountain, something that's pretty complex that the team is responsible for maintaining. The photo on the right is recent maintenance that was undertaken to replace some failed components or worn out components inside the sails. And on the left is a photo of a storm drain that is probably about 50 or 60 years old that was recently rehabilitated. There's some photos later on here. Again, more photographs of some projects. I can't remember if it was last year. I think it was the installation of the Welcome to Tiburon signboard in the medians right here across from Town Hall. It's a notable project that was completed and allowed for more public messaging as folks enter our downtown area. Photo on the left is clearing of vegetation in the railroad marsh behind Town Hall. Again, some more projects that fall into the special projects category, but are handled in-house by our Parks Division staff. And it's also worth noting that on the larger projects, both divisions team up to staff these types of things. On the left was some regrading and smoothing of the gravel path around South Knoll Park. And the top right was installing some artwork at the bike repair station at Blackie's Pasture. And not artwork, I'm sorry, a trail map. A project that was just completed as of last week was the installation of a new kiosk at the corner of Main Street and Paradise Drive or Tiburon Boulevard, depending on how you look at it. And it's a very exciting new addition to our downtown area. I'm not sure if everybody's seen it, but it has maps of amenities and local businesses and trails for folks that are visiting Tiburon. And it's something that can be easily updated as businesses and other things change. It also has ferry schedules on it. I'm going to go through this pretty quickly just to outline the difference between the Public Works operations budget and the annual capital improvement program. So this is for the fiscal year we're in right now, and Public Works is currently funded at around $2.8 million, and that's just for the day-to-day operations that cover staff salaries, vehicles, equipment, materials to maintain things, elements out in the parks. And then separate from that is the capital improvement program, which I'll go through pretty briefly. This year, it's funded at around $4.2 million, and it comprises of projects that fall into several different categories across streets, drainage, and community development improvements. And I'll go into that here in a minute. This is the entire list. It's also for the capital improvement projects for this year, and it's also available on the Public Works webpage, and it outlines all of the programs that we fund annually in the Department of Public Works, and then a handful of projects that we're undertaking that are outside of the annually funded programs. And I'll go into depth in a minute about that. This is just to show the variety of funding sources, whether it's grants or local taxes or state taxes that we receive to basically fund all of our capital projects. And it's a variety of funded or funding sources. And then we utilize a lot of general fund revenue as well to pay for these projects. So there are 4 programs that we fund annually, and each program basically there would be either 1 or 2 projects per program that we construct every year, and it's showing just an ongoing commitment to maintaining these elements Most of them are infrastructure related. So every year we have the annual bicycle and pedestrian improvements program. And really, it's funded around $50,000. And this is a program that we utilize to design projects, vet projects, and to address different improvements that were identified in the bicycle and pedestrian master plan. And just because it's funded at $50,000 every year doesn't mean that larger projects don't come through. This is just a baseline funding level for getting projects started and kind of established. Another annual program that the Department of Public Works is responsible for is the Open Space Management Program. And this, David and I were just talking about it the other day. I think it's doubled at least, or maybe tripled in the last couple of years. And this focuses on removing invasive species in the town-owned open space parcels. We own and maintain around 250 acres across the whole town. So it mostly focuses on removing invasive species, reducing fire fuel loads, maintaining fire roads and things like that. So every year we have contractors that go out several times a year to maintain parcels that were identified in our open space management plan that was developed in 2010. And then we did an update in 2022 that really focused on some short-term implementation goals to make sure that we are allocating our resources as efficiently and effectively as possible to cover as much as we can. I think this might be our last ongoing, or maybe second to last ongoing capital improvement program. And it's our street pavement maintenance and rehabilitation program. And generally, we do some type of streets project every year on a large scale. We alternate between street rehabilitation and street maintenance. So maintenance projects are usually a little bit smaller and comprise of things like slurry seal and repairing of potholes. And then the rehabilitation projects focus on larger scale repaving. This, I think, is the last program, and it's the storm drain maintenance and rehabilitation program. And this is something that we developed probably within maybe 5 or 8 years ago, when we really realized how critical the aging infrastructure under our streets was, how aged it was, and how much maintenance these storm drains had needed. So we go through every year and pick a variety of segments of storm drains that we try to rehabilitate as much as possible using a trenchless method as to not disturb our streets. And the goal is to go through and rehabilitate as many storm drain lines as we can each year, to make sure that they don't fail, they don't cause flooding, or they don't lead to sinkholes in our streets. I'll go through this one quickly. It has some nice photos of the beginning, the middle, and the end of a recently completed, very exciting project that I'm sure everyone here is well aligned with. It's the Richardson Bay Pond Site Acquisition and Remediation Project. This is a project that I think David completed last year, and this is in our railroad marsh. And the goal of this project is to maintain the railroad marsh as a stormwater detention basin and to reduce biomass so that the railroad marsh doesn't eventually get swallowed up by the cattails and reduce and eliminate its ability to serve as a stormwater detention basin. And this is a project that's on the horizon for the town. I'm not sure if David has spoken about it yet, but it's the Blackie's Pasture Beach Restoration Program, or project, which I believe is fully funded by grants, and the design is in process right now, or in progress right now, with construction hopefully starting this summer. And this is a project to reduce coastal erosion in the Blackie's Pasture area and to restore some of the areas that had been eroded, and basically improving the area so that it stays put and is functional the way it should be. You can see in this picture, there's a lot of old debris that's been dumped, and a lot of the stuff is really going to be cleaned up. And the goal of this project is to clean that area up and shore it up for decades to come. A couple of other projects that Public Works was responsible for. The Elephant Walkway needed some maintenance recently. I think this was last year as well, where we replaced the handrails that were rusted and falling down. Again, maintaining the focus on maintaining existing infrastructure that we have is what operations maintenance is mostly focusing their efforts on year round. And another project that was recently completed was the regrading of a fire road at Gilmartin Drive at the lower entrance and improving drainage so that the path wouldn't erode out during storms. I have a small roadway stabilization project we did on Spanish Trail. And again, I talked about the open space vegetation management program. These are some one photo from a project that I think is wrapping up this week to clear what's known as the Evie property, which is off of Gilmartin Drive and Round Hill Road. And we used mechanical means to clear, I think around 50 acres. And the contractor was able to clear virtually the whole site of any non-desirable vegetation while obviously maintaining mature trees and vegetation that we wanted to keep intact. So now the property is essentially cleared and safe and useful. Facilities project that was recently completed actually this week was the renovation of the locker rooms at the police department. This spanned over 2 fiscal years. And here's that same storm drain line that runs under the old rail trail. Again, focus on infrastructure and things that folks sometimes don't necessarily think about that we rely on to operate. And this storm drain was lined using a liner and a trenchless method. So the path was not needed to be excavated. And then upcoming projects that we have, again, more street rehab project. We're looking at the brick crosswalks downtown. David's working on the Main Street seawall repairs project. We're looking at a safe routes to school circulation improvement project near the courtyard in between Ned's Way and Lyford Drive to add sidewalks and to really clean up and improve the way that folks are able to walk through that area. So we're looking at grant funding for that and hoping to talk about it more in the coming fiscal year. We're also looking at replacing a failed retaining wall on the old rail trail near Lagoon Road. Of course, working on the Parks Master Plan short-term and early implementation initiatives. Talked about the Blackie's Pasture beach restoration project, and then a couple of other facilities and drainage projects that are listed here on the screen that I won't read off. And that's the end of my presentation.
Great. Thanks, Patrick. So what I would like to do is this is just an informational item that Patrick provided, but if you guys have any questions, I have a couple that I'd like to just ask Patrick. And then if there's people who are here or online would like to ask any questions for 3 minutes, we can go through that process because I think it's been great. Do you guys have any questions? I have a couple yeah, go for it.
Okay, thanks. Thank you so much for that presentation. That was great to see. Just a couple questions, and apologies if I missed the answers in the presentation. The first is, I've heard from members of the green team that they really could use, like, that their labor isn't able to cover all the work that needs doing. And they really could use like as much as 1.5 additional FTE just to maintain the parks that we have. Can you tell me if there's any kind of plan to add more town FTE or what it would take?
Sure. So as part of the Parks Master Plan effort, David, actually the town manager, David and I have been working through starting the budget process and really looking at that to try to figure out if we can accommodate the addition of a full-time employee and also looking at any options that may exist to be able to have contractors help us as well. So I'm looking at even just in the short term, expanding the scope of work that our landscape maintenance contractors who assist us provide and seeing if we can get some immediate help from them in the short term while we look at the deficits in staff, because as I think everybody's aware, just as the park system was looked at during the Parks Master Plan, there was a 1.5 FTE deficit that was basically presented, and further improvements may require even more help. So it's something that's definitely at the forefront of our mind as we're going through the budgeting process and looking at how our department operates and what help we probably will need in the future.
Thanks so much. And then the second question I have is on the budget and the process, and this may be also a David question, but the budget and the process for some of what we may recommend in the Parks Master Plan, some of what we may recommend from this Parks Master Plan planning process to town council. There's some low-hanging fruit that is sort of lower budget, but I still could use some information about what's available.
So, yeah, and that's what I was actually just going to mention. So every year, as we're putting the capital improvement program and budget together, staff has a retreat with town council where we get together, and it's it's a public meeting. It's a little less formal, but we go through and give a presentation, and it's really just an open discussion on all of the different projects that we have and potential needs within the town. And from there, generally, we get direction from town council as how they would like to see certain projects move forward or have more attention spent on them. And then from there, we make recommendations, or we create a list of capital improvement projects that would then be brought to town council requesting funding and approval to proceed on. So really the capital improvement program and budget retreat is the kind of the first step to getting all these types of projects out in front of town council in an open forum to discuss them. And over the years, the format has, depending on the projects that need to be discussed, basically we have a whole list of projects that have been looked at over the years, and some kind of stay on a short list as in things that really need to get taken care of if it's relating to aging infrastructure or immediate repairs, and then other projects that may be more nice to haves or things that there may not be as much support for. We still have these projects on lists, but we just may not elect to go forward with them in that particular year.
That's really useful. And then in terms of like timing on that meeting cycle, when does it happen?
I don't know if it's been scheduled yet, but I think it usually occurs in April.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
That's it for me.
Great, thanks. Commissioner Moon, any questions?
Yeah, just one question. In the master planning process, it came to light that a lot of people in this community wanted to see better signage, wayfinding, and mapping for our public park system. I'm wondering if you agree with that assessment, and two, like what you guys can be doing or what needs to happen, I guess, from a public process to make and affect some of those changes, because it seems like they're lower hanging fruit based on some of the things that was in the master plan on recommendations to fix or do.
Sure. I'm really excited about that initiative and project. Maybe the most exciting thing that I'm looking forward to working on, because it just makes so much sense. And I think that we're looking at definitely, if we have time this fiscal year, starting the process of engaging everybody to discuss it, but at the minimum in the coming fiscal year, which starts this summer, getting together with everybody and figuring out how it should look and where things should go. But it's definitely something that I think is very important. and long overdue for us. Did you have anything?
Yeah, we are, Public Works, Patrick and I and our town manager have been working on that, low-hanging amenity matrix of what WRT, had recommended. And that will be, and we were mandated by town council to, bring that back to them for them to look at. So we have prepared that. We're still in the middle of that, but it will be going to town council, next month or early March, the first meeting. And they will look at all those recommendations. Patrick's putting together cost estimates and what we can immediately get done this fiscal year. And then the rest would be what town council would like moving forward. And that table or that matrix will be shared here with the post commission, because there's a couple columns in there that you will have to fill out as far as, because we have subcommittees. Pretty much every one of those recommendations a subcommittee is working on. And based on your work and where you're at, we're hoping town council will then give us direction on which projects they'd like Public Works to move on immediately. And then after that, as Patrick mentioned, the retreat is a great forum where we can present additional projects, special projects that the commission is recommending, and then that town council would weigh on based on fiscal duties that they have available in front of them to move forward with those projects. So the town will be seeing immediate work on those recommendations, especially the low-lying fruit that we can move forward with.
Thank you, Chair. A couple questions. Patrick, thanks for being here. And I've met you in the field before, but lots to think about. So I'll limit my questions to just our commission's jurisdiction. On trails, you mentioned the retaining wall replacement. I haven't heard much about that. Just curious, projecting out, what time frame is that scheduled for potentially? And then could that potentially result in a closure of the ORT for a period of time?
So there's a wooden, I'll just describe the location first, and then I'll talk to you about, we actually had a possible change in plans on this project that just happened within the last couple of weeks. So there's a wooden retaining wall that runs, it's probably about 50 feet long, and it runs kind of where that little bridge is right after the Lyford Drive parking lot as you're coming into town. There's a tree, a small wooden bridge, and then a wooden retaining wall with trees lining it, almost right when you get to Lagoon Road when you're coming in. And you may remember, or you may recognize it by where the trail splits. You can either go on the bridge or go up and around. We were originally thinking about just replacing the failed retaining wall. And after we looked at it more, David and I and the town manager, it made sense to look at the whole area a little bit more in depth and maybe think of something different to do there in terms of reducing any of the constrictions, as in there's a narrow bridge there. A bicycle and a person can't get through at the same time, and look at it in a different light and see if other options may make better sense for that area to try to reduce the congestedness that it sometimes suffers.
Got it. So working on that probably would not result in a trail closure at all, because you could just have a workaround.
That's what we're thinking. And one thing I forgot to mention is that initially we were planning on replacing in kind this year, very low impact project. But after thinking about it more and diving into it, what we're thinking about is looking at it and designing a better fix, or something that may more effectively address concerns in the area, to be constructed this coming fiscal year, as in the summer and beyond.
Great. Thank you. Second question on open space. Just curious on reducing fire hazards. How's the town doing right now? I assume you have to, work with partners from the county, Tiburon Fire and Southern Marin Fire. So just curious, I'm sure that's top of mind for many folks. What's the status of reducing fire hazards within our open space? And just if you could talk a little bit more about who you partner with on.
Sure. So traditionally, well, in the past, years ago, the town manually cleared vegetation in the open space. And although it was the preferred method, it was very laborious, very expensive, and really didn't lead to a lot of production in terms of getting areas cleared that we wanted to get rid of. French broom, for example. The folks would pull a small area, it would be right back the following season. So what we're experimenting with, and I think this is either our first or second season that we've been doing it, we've been using mechanized means. So as in essentially mowing a lot of these areas where there's broom, and we have folks standing by that are watching out for fire watch and making sure that the tractors aren't getting around any things that we need to protect, and also looking out for any biology in the area. So the project that we were just talking about on the EV property, which is in between Gilmartin Drive and Round Hill, this contractor was able to clear around 50 acres of very hilly and very remote terrain in just a matter of weeks. And it's really impressive when you go out there. Granted, there are still broom seeds in the ground that will continue to grow, but what our hope is that the maintenance efforts will get cheaper and cheaper to essentially eradicate the broom in these parcels. So in addition to projects like that in our priority areas, we're going out and hopefully this spring, as soon as we can put a project together, we're going to go evaluate more fire road sections to make sure that they're in tip-top shape and passable by any type of fire apparatus. And we do work with Tiburon Fire very closely. We have a meeting with their fire prevention folks next week, and Southern Marin. Southern Marin has, I think, a whole slew of projects that basically they will be working to partner with us on in the areas of their jurisdiction.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks for being here. Appreciate that a lot. And also appreciate, and I hope folks also appreciate how much you guys get done with the amount of FTE you have, and then using contractors and managing that process. That's a pretty big, heavy lift. So appreciate that. One question is what is the best way for people if they see something or want to make a change, like maybe maybe a baby diaper changing station in the restrooms at the different parks? How should what's the most effective way to let the town know, to say like, hey, is it possible to do this? And what's your preferred mechanism for effectively doing that?
I think emailing David or I would probably be our best recommendation. It's a small department, so usually folks don't have to go too far to get a hold of us. Our field staff also often do get ideas from folks out when they're working in the field that usually transfer to David or I. And I think in regards to small improvements like that, usually we can accommodate them in-house without a lot of analysis. You know, if it's something that's not controversial, that makes sense, doesn't cost a lot of money, usually we do it on the spot. We also have a report a problem form submission page on the town website if folks want to remain anonymous or if they want to contact us that way.
Okay, great, thanks. And then if people have comments on on any additions that they'd like to make on this improvement that you're making between basically the library to the parking lot at Lyford. Actually, somebody did mention to me once they wish there was better lighting there when daylight savings doesn't happen, because a lot of people park there for the ferry, and that's a dark section. There's not any. So how would what's the process that you guys are going to have for that?
Contacting us directly with their comments. And I think the goal of posting the capital improvement project list on our webpage every year is to try to get that out there to everybody in the public so that they know what we're working on and communicating that to us. But in terms of getting ideas to us ahead of time, if we get ideas early enough and enough momentum behind them, they can be brought up at the council retreat, or if they come through a post, for example, that can help as well to gain momentum to get it in front of us.
Terrific. And then to understand the process and timing, the retreat for capital improvement planning or projects is in April, and then the final decision for capital improvement projects would then be in June. So it's important for the folks in town, if they want to be aware of these things, to hopefully know what's going on in terms of different projects in the April through June timeframe, if available. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that's fair. And just one side note, that a lot of the projects we've done in the last couple of years, the last cycle or two, have been focusing on maintaining existing infrastructure. So the stuff we've been working on the last couple of years has mostly just been keeping up what we have. So by all means, we welcome any suggestions.
Great, thank you. Is there anybody in chambers here who would like to make any comments for 3 minutes regarding the presentation? Please step up to the mic and state your name and where you live, if you want to state your name, and if you live in where you live, and your 3 minutes.
Hi, I'm Jenna. I live in Tiburon. I just had a couple of questions. It's okay to ask questions?
Sure.
First was, can your department, does it have the ability to issue citations when there's a violation in the parks?
We don't have any code enforcement officers that go out and do those types of patrols, but it is something that we work with the police department on regularly. And often our folks are the first line of seeing these types of violations and are the reporting parties to the police department.
So would people come to you first then if they want to report violations?
Sometimes if it's something, I always try to tell folks, if it's something that's happening right away, like right in front of the person or actively occurring, to call the police department dispatch. And it doesn't necessarily mean folks have to call 911. They can always call the non-emergency line and still get to dispatch. But that's, I think, the best way to ensure that somebody gets out there as fast as possible.
Okay, but for things that are less urgent, we could.
You can always send them to us. Yeah.
Okay, that's one question. And then in terms of the beach restoration, it sounds like the design is still forthcoming. So will the public have a chance to weigh in on that process at all?
So the design, the concept design has been approved. So right now the county's just working on the final plans so that they can go out to bid. So the design is complete. They're just finalizing the plans based on some few comments from BCDC. A few environmental folks are going to be out there in about 2 weeks, do some final survey of the mud flats and just the area in general, and also existing utilities. So once they have their final plan is completely done and we're ready to go out to bid, we'll bring it back here to post so that you can see the final.
Like it was there.
Yeah, town council approved that plan back in,
So it's already just a
Yes.
done deal.
yeah, September, I
I
think.
think
or
there's just some
October.
concern that the public and families won't be able to access that beach anymore. I think there's rumors flying around. So
We're actually making that beach more accessible.
yeah, that's what you've
That's what the
said.
plan has. We have to work with BCDC, and they require actually additional trails out there, more than what we have now. So it's going to be a very good project. One, it's first and foremost, it's an erosion control plan. So to fight erosion and eroding shoreline. But two, you will have that. Now, the only time you won't have access there is when they're out there doing the construction. And that'll be limited, non-access, but it'll have more access.
Okay, that's great to hear. Thanks. And then when is the fiscal year start exactly for you?
So the fiscal year cycle goes from July 1st to June 30th every year.
And when does your budget get approved?
Usually it gets approved during I think they present it the first meeting of June and then adopted the second.
Second meeting.
The
of
second
council,
meeting, yeah.
okay.
Which means if you have comments on the budget, you should get ahead of that, because when it gets discussed in the first meeting, it's just a process. It's just they'll go through the detailed items, and then the last meeting is they're basically approving that they already approved it. So there's really no traction if there's something that you see. That's from experience.
I seem to recall the town council starting to talk about budget around March. Is that? track
We
or-
start the planning process around then, but usually I don't think anything gets out to the public until maybe June or end of May, like a draft budget for review.
But the input process.
Oh, the input process, yeah, during the retreat, I'm sorry. Yeah, in April.
And the public can attend this retreat?
Yep.
Is there other cocktails and caviar?
I just want to be conscious of
Sorry,
the
okay,
time.
one more question. Can members of the public or organizations buy ads for the kiosk?
I'm not sure. I think, I'm not exactly sure. Yeah, but the
that's a
Chamber
great-
of Commerce, we're working with them to manage whatever does go in there in terms of content, but
But that's a great question. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
so much for your presentation.
thank you.
Are there any Other questions? Yeah, please.
Hi there,
Hello.
Evan Siegel, live in Tiburon. Kind of a broad question on the master parks plan. Is there a budget? It's like there's a big wish list. Does anyone actually put a stake in the ground and said in, the next, when our grandchildren are still here, is there like an actual budget, number one? And then has anyone actually talked about where the funding is going to come from to support this plan once it's decided?
Great question. If I could just, so this process, for example, if there's a decision to develop a play structure at a play area at some location, then it would be a capital improvement project, and it would go through the town council in terms of their budgeting item, and they would look at their budget to say, like, what do we have money to do this year? And looking at all the different other competing items, and they're like, well, we either need to pave the road, or we need to do this, or we're going to build an electric vehicle charging station, or we're going to do this. And that's their decision-making process. So this, here at Parks, Open Space and Trails Commission, we advise the town council on items that we think they should pursue. So like there's some action items later on in this meeting that we are advising the town council to do. And then they will pull together those items. And if they decide they have the budget and the priority to pursue those. And it's really that in town council that they have the budget to do that. I would recommend anybody to take a look at the town council archives are awesome. I probably spend too much time on them. But looking at the CIP list of projects, and Patrick had those up, it's a very public process. And they'll go through those pieces, and you can say, like, that's what they've decided for capital improvement projects. It's about $4 to $5 million a year on average.
So I understand the standard operating process. This is like this is like a capital campaign. And the community wants to support a master parks project and find ways to bring capital into the community, which includes fundraising, which includes grants from foundations.
Understood.
Corporations.
I don't want to, I understood. Yes, and in town council, they'll decide, how do we want to fund this piece? So if we're going to fund, so for example, very similar to what Belvedere did, they decided they want to redo their play area over there by their city hall. That was funded. The playground structure behind south of Knoll was also funded by other folks, not just the town. So we'll go through that process. And if the town goes, hey, this play structure or this play area, we really want to build, but we don't have the funds for it, how can we do this? Then we can begin creating a nonprofit to fund that. Similar to what, again, Mill Valley did. They built a new volleyball area, and there's some fundraising for that. They actually have a 501(c) that actually does funding for these projects. Does that help?
It does. I guess what, the broader context is, and having served in government roles, there's no one who owns this park planning process. What seems to be is there's many different subcommittees and commissions and town council. There's no one person that, people in the community can look at and say, who owns this? Who do we go to say this was either worked or didn't? Because what it feels like is you have, grandkids that are 4 or 5 years old, they're going to be graduating high school before something even gets done. And I'm trying to understand.
Agreed.
Rather than
Understood.
This committee going to this circular process.
So the only reason I want to be able to move on the meeting, so that's why I understood, and actually Commissioner Moon brought that up once. He's like, where's the back to Pat to say, hey, good job, and to keep things going forward as well. Other large cities like the city of San Francisco has a parks person that's his job, right? That's what he does. In Tiburon, we don't have that. However, what we're trying to do with these different subcommittees is to move the ball forward. At the end of the day, there's 5 individuals who make that decision. They are the town council. So if I would actually highly recommend that you maybe potentially come to the meeting at town council and bring up this point as well. But it's a valid point. I think that would be your decision makers, that you would be a proper place to bring it up.
Great. And 2 granular questions for these guys.
Yeah.
Is there dredging that's going to go on around the state is going to dredge sand around the beaches?
No,
So there's no
No.
dredging?
no, there isn't.
So there's a rumor going around, there's dredging.
No, there was a rumor and we submitted answers to all the rumors to town council. No dredging, there's no mining happening over there.
And that garage adjacent to the ponds where, trucks are driving in and out of the road where there's bicyclists and people, is that critical to stay in that location?
That's a sanitary
That's a
district.
sanitary
No,
district's
but is
property.
that,
It's their property, it's their road, they've been permitted to do that since the beginning.
but technically, is there anything there that's special or unique that it needs to be there?
I don't know.
They're not actively treating sewage at that site anymore, so they use it more as their corporation yard and offices. Although on the side closest to the Blackie's pasture restrooms, there is a pump station, I think, that has to remain in use, but everything else there is storage for those folks.
Okay, just interesting to know because, you don't necessarily want trucks driving up and down a road where you got kids on bicycles and so, thank you.
And Patrick, what sanitation district is that?
It's the Richardson Bay Sanitation District.
All right, so Richardson Bay Sanitation District, they have probably monthly or quarterly meetings.
They're on board.
If you'd like to, there's a couple people in Tiburon who are on that, former mayors actually, who are on that. I would go to their meeting and ask that same question because it's a good one. Any other council questions here in chambers? Anything online, David?
I see none.
All right. I don't know where we are on the agenda though. Hold on. Terrific. Patrick, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
I appreciate you. All right, action items. First one up is the McKegney Green Field Use Policy Subcommittee. My friends to my left. Chambers, right? You're up.
Great. So today we're going to be taking a vote on some suggested language changes to the existing policy on McKegney Green field use. I could talk about, I guess, the process of how we got here and then summarize kind of the key changes to the language. And then we could just have a discussion around it. But over the past 6 months or so, we've had conversations with both Tiburon Soccer as well as Tiburon Lacrosse, with also town management. And, Liz and I have been trying to hear the various viewpoints, the questions, the concerns around the use of the field. And, one thing that's very clear is that McKegney Green is a precious commodity. We do have a field shortage in Tiburon. And, unfortunately, because of that, we're going to have to share that field and try to come up with policies and procedures that, try to maintain the field, optimize the field, and just be able to use it as an asset, a community asset for all Tiburon kids. This is our attempt to hear all of that and make some recommendations that we think is the best for the town and for Tiburon and for the kids that play both soccer and lacrosse. And I would say that the changes can be organized in 5 different major buckets. The first is just around clarification. So there have been common practices already that have been done on that field, but just haven't been represented in terms of the language in the field use policy, and this corrects those. So number 1 is that we clarify that multiple organizations can use the field at the same time. Number 2 is that we're clarifying that fees are charged to organizations that use that field, regardless of how much that field is being used at the time. And number 3, the current practice has effectively been that there's been a limit in terms of the age or the grade of the kids that play lacrosse for safety reasons, that the girls lacrosse teams that play there shall be not older than eighth grade, and for boys lacrosse, it shall not be older than sixth grade, which is my understanding the common is the current usage policy today, but wasn't specified in the policy document, which we've redlined here. The second area of change is pricing. We're recommending a change from $70 to $80 to account for CPI and cost of living adjustments. I believe the town is still operating at a deficit in terms of field maintenance. This change going from 70 to 80 shall bridge some of that gap. I'm not sure it's 100% of it, but a good deal to help bridge some of that operating deficit that the town has maintaining that field. The third major category of change is field optimization. We are recommending that the field be used in blocks of time of 3:30 to 5 p.m. and 5 to 6:30 p.m. after daylight savings times during the spring. My understanding in our research is that in prior years, this is largely how it has worked and how lacrosse and soccer have shared the field in maximizing the time used on that field by Tiburon kids. And so we are recommending that we go with that policy of timing blocks. The fourth major area is communication. So field closures today, if you're not looking at the signs that are on the field when it's closed, the way to get information of whether or not it's closed was to call a 1-800 number. We're going to update that to the 21st century and post it on a website instead. So people can look at whether or not the field's closed, and it'll be updated real time on the Tiburon website. And the fifth and final category of changes is just scheduling lead time. There's just been times in the past when soccer and lacrosse respectively have been giving the other organization their schedule at different times before when the season starts, which has just posed problems in terms of scheduling and organizing and giving parents and teams heads up of what the schedules will look like. And based on a compromise between the organizations, they agreed that approximately 3 weeks before the season start is a fair and balanced time to submit the schedule to the town. So that would be July 7th prior to the fall season and February 7th prior to the spring season. So that is a summary of all of the changes. I know that was super exciting, but it was a result of a lot of work actually between Liz and I, hearing a lot of different sides and trying to maintain this policy and update it based on kind of the current situation and the facts that we've seen. I guess one important note is that in the prior meeting, this subcommittee did talk about perhaps changing the sport in season paradigm to more of a percentage of field time usage over the entire year. Based on a lot of conversations that Liz and I had and some additional research, it became clear to us that that was not a workable type of solution, and that in fact maintaining sport in season was the right way to go. And so one key change to the prior subcommittee report that we had here was that we are fully maintaining sport in season for soccer in the fall and lacrosse in the spring. So,
do you have any questions? We'll have discussion after public comment. Mr. Burr.
Sure. Just,
Do you have any questions for them? That's all.
yeah, quick question. Other than soccer and lacrosse, has there been a history of any other leagues asking to use McKegney Green, like flag football or softball or anybody else, like at all in recent history?
I'll defer that to David.
Not a loaded question. It was just a genuine question.
No other sports have contacted us.
Mhm.
We've had adult organizations that want to use McKegney Green for soccer, for adult play, but they are outside of the 94920 zip code because that's still in force where 75% of the participants need to be from the zip code.
That's it.
Okay. If no other questions, what we'll do is we'll have 3 minutes of comments or from the town, from anybody who's here in chambers or online. And then when we're done with that, then we will discuss as commissioners and then make a decision based on that. So that's the process. Who would like to come up and I saw a hand raised in the back. No? Okay, come on up.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Hi.
you have 3 minutes.
Thanks. My name is Shannon Neese. I actually am a Tiburon resident, but I also am the girls director for the Southern Marin Lacrosse Club. It's not the Tiburon Lacrosse Club. And we actually, John Porter, myself, have had the privilege of meeting with Commissioner Judge, Commissioner Moon, David, and to discuss over the last couple months how we're using the field, if we would change anything. And I think the only point that I wanted to bring up was in terms of the time blocks, because I know that you had mentioned that the time blocks were something that you wanted to institute. However, in our conversations, we have mentioned that we don't work in time blocks as the soccer club does. So how we run our club and how we run our practices is very different. And that's really based on the fact that we have different age groups practicing at different times, but the age groups also practice for different lengths of time. So in other words, younger kids don't practice as long as maybe a U14 group. And so in terms of working around those time blocks, it's very difficult for us because of, first of all, because of that. Second of all, to get sometimes our parent volunteers to the field for a 3:30 time slot is pretty difficult. As you both or all of are aware, the traffic sometimes along Tiburon Boulevard can be pretty gridlocked during that, I would say 2:45 to 3:45 time block. So trying to get there for a 3:30 time block is pretty difficult. One of the things that we did talk about in our meeting is, and that you didn't mention when you talked about the time blocks was, what the, if we didn't work on those time blocks, what would essentially happen? So in other words, if we had a practice at 4 o'clock, I know there was some language in that red lines that mentioned, not obeying by those and losing support of the season. Is that still in the language?
Yes, it is. The language basically states that if there is a like a repeated and systematic misuse of using the time blocks, that the town manager in their discretion can determine that there has been sort of a misuse of the field time, which then would lead to potentially loss of sport and season for the following year. However, that there would be an appeal process that the organization can come to post to make their case, that if they wanted to appeal that decision. And the purpose of this, just as a clarification, the purposes of this is not to penalize an organization if a coach, is 10 minutes late because of traffic or, because of life, something happens and they can't get there at that time. What we're trying to do here is optimize the timing of the field and the use. McKegney itself is a very precious asset, as we know, and everybody wants to use it. And it is not optimal, or it's not good for anyone if the field just doesn't get used at 3:30, which some organizations like soccer can use the time at that time if lacrosse can't. So that's not to say that lacrosse can't use the field. If they can't start at 3:30, they can obviously use the 5 to 6:30 block. But my understanding is that Tiburon parents are can be flexible and try to make things work if that's how it needs to be done. But if not, then there's the 5 o'clock time block.
Right. I guess my one other comment would be on putting together maybe some guidelines. It seems kind of very open-ended in terms of interpretation of what the town manager might think is not in line with the 3:30 block. So in other words, is it one day a week, or is it something that like every Friday they're late? And it just seems very subjective in terms of what the interpretation is of what the breaches of that contract or what those time blocks. And so I would request to not vote on this tonight and to have some further discussion on how we could put together some maybe measurable guidelines on what that would look like.
Great. Thanks for your comments. I
you.
appreciate it. Yes, sir.
I have one quick question for you.
Well, yeah, we need you to come up to the mic and you gotta do the,
You probably thought about this, but and the Blackers pasture area, could you create a smaller field for the younger kids that instead of them having to walk the parking lot, young kids, bicyclists, et cetera, be safer for them, drop off, et cetera. Doesn't have to be as big as McKegney, but seem like low-lying fruit to kind of, grade it, put some seed down and have a field for young kids.
it's a great comment. And I think potentially during our subcommittees, we'll talk about that and you'll see during that process why these subcommittees exist. And kind of what we do is also as commissioners is I'm not taking anything away from town staff, but we're kind of unpaid consultants to them because they don't have the staff to do all the work. So there's actually some folks who have done some research around potential things that we can add in these different areas.
So I'm just Commissioner Judge, is that something like, it's not rocket scientist, I imagine you thought of?
We've discussed it and, when this item comes up on the agenda, we'll share what the ideas that we have for that space. It's definitely part of the ideas that we'll be discussing in that agenda item. And as with everything in this plan, we will be recommending to town council things. We still have more process to do. So we want to, we've talked to some of the some of the residents in the neighborhoods nearby. We'll want to talk to more, we'll want to get more community input, but it's definitely an idea that's in the mix right now, and it makes sense.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you.
Sure. Is there any other comments on the McKegney Green use policy here in chambers? Okay. Is there anybody on Zoom raising their little hand?
Yes, we do. John? You need to unmute. There.
John, are you there?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Kind of. Yeah, it's not a clear signal.
How's that? Is that better?
Kinda, but not the best.
Dang it, really? Okay, can you unmute and mute me again? See if it works that time?
Sure. We'll unmute and mute you, or do you want to dial back in? Is there anybody else who wants to? Okay.
No. John just logged off. He's gonna log back in, I believe.
Okay. I'll go through.
There we go.
Okay.
Is that any better?
John?
Yep, I'm here. Any better?
Not really.
Oh, boy.
Worse.
Yeah, it's worse. Is there a way you can,
I'm gonna do it from my phone. Okay, I'll do this one more time. This should do the trick. I apologize. One more.
it's got to be on your side, I think.
I'll do it one more time. One sec, sorry.
Is there a way you can write your comments and we'll have a discussion, then I'm gonna try to move us forward. We can have some discussion because I know that I have some questions and other comments, and then when John comes back, or you can write, or if you'd like to write and David can read what your comments are. I always like to use the voice to writing in Word or in Google, whatever your app is. Does that make sense? You guys okay with that? So I'm not closing public comment.
We do have one more hand up.
Oh, okay.
Andrew.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear
No.
me?
Oh,
Given that,
maybe it is
it's
on our end.
our end.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was
Good, we
just
figured this
pointing
out,
out that
David.
we could hear him.
Okay.
It's fine on my computer. I think it has to be sounds here.
Oh,
Fine on my computer. So speakers, I think it must be, yeah.
somebody wants to talk.
Hey,
Thank you.
Chuck.
Bell request hour.
No, just letting you know that we in the out here could hear him talking, but you can't hear him.
We know that, yeah. Thank you.
Okay, that's all I was putting my hand up for.
Okay.
Goodbye.
And then we're doing 70s requests later on. Thanks everybody for your patience, both online and here in chambers. Looks like the speakers here in chambers are not working.
Yeah, they're not working.
They're not working.
Yeah.
You can almost just phone in.
So, yeah, so why doesn't, we had John, and I'm happy to see if we can do this. There might be some
How do you
need
phone in
to my phone.
Or join Zoom on a device.
No, it's
No.
the problem is they can't do it. So Thompson was gonna, if John wants to call my number, just give him my phone number. 415-902-7762. It's all right. It's out there in the sphere. You've got my number, Dave. And just have him call it and I'll answer.
762.
Oh, do you add John too? Okay, cool. All right.
Colin?
Okay, no 2 a.m. calls, please.
2762.
Yes.
Sweet. So the speakers aren't working here at all?
No,
Wait.
he doesn't see any problems on his end. So, yeah,
Okay.
something we're gonna have to.
Oh,
Or, hold on.
well, everyone's going to be calling my phone to talk. And we're gonna see if that works. All right.
And
Hello. This is John. All right, hold on a minute. I'm going to put you on my speakerphone and we're going to try to run you through my mic and we'll see what we can do here. All right. And if it's a Jimi Hendrix moment, we'll all know. John, you have 3 minutes.
Well, thanks for accommodating me to be able to call in and talk and speak. I appreciate it. And then on top of that, appreciate all Commissioner Moon and Judge's time in going through this review, and really appreciate all the help, insight, and time. And I'm going to just speak to what Shannon spoke to earlier. I think a lot of the proposals are fine to vote on. We're in support all but one, and it's more along the lines of the language that's written in there about the time blocks. Because just to expand on that more, I would feel comfortable if there was language that spoke to Michael, you mentioned earlier, systematic. I don't see that kind of language in there. And the way I feel about it is, if we're saying earlier, if a coach is sick, has to cancel practice, or there's a team that goes on a field trip and they can't be there at 3:30 and they have to skip a practice and they miss that 3:30. So there's 2 teams out there instead of 3 for a 3:30 practice. And then the way it reads to us is we can get reported and then we are at risk for losing sport of the season. And it just seems very loose language, and we feel comfortable if the language was stronger, so there was more context around it, where it said, hey, if we're perennial violators of this rule, and it's whatever, then that would help us get more comfortable with the language. Then the other ask is, in our recent meeting with soccer, lacrosse, and the commission subcommittee, this was going into effect this fall, because obviously we're starting our season now, and we didn't budget for increase, but not just that, but maneuvering it, because our registration is still open for some age groups, the youngest age group. So, and then the last piece is on those time blocks that makes it challenging is, like, we have kindergartners and first graders that will practice for an hour. But the way I'm interpreting these 90-minute time blocks is we don't have an out to give them out of there for 90 minutes, right? So if they want to practice for 60 minutes, and then we bring on the older team an hour later, and they practice for an hour and 45 minutes, that the way these time blocks are being sketched out is not allowed, and just don't feel comfortable making first graders practice for an hour and a half. They're done after an hour is pushing it. So to stretch those practices for those first graders to 90 minutes long is going to be a real challenge for our kids anyways. I don't know how soccer does, but for lacrosse kids, it's just too long to be out on the field for first graders. So we're trying to, so again, it goes back to the language and some of the clarity around those time blocks, because you mentioned earlier that's the way it historically has worked. I think soccer maybe had mentioned that, because we've never operated in those time slots because it's age dependent.
Gotcha.
A lot of times, and I think what Shannon was getting at on some of that point.
All right.
So that's it.
Thanks, John. Thanks for your patience. And this is again, so thank you. Have a good night, and we'll continue our discussion that I think you can hear fine. Thanks.
Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good night.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay. Is there anybody else online? Was Andrew just wanted to clarify that he can?
Yeah,
he was
none.
Okay, cool. Any other comments here in chambers? Come on up.
Good evening. My name's Lou Comesso. I live in town. And I actually coach soccer and I coach lacrosse. And I'm a volunteer parent coach. Been doing it for a long time. I actually line the fields. So a couple of things. When I heard John ask me to come tonight, when he told me about the language with there's a potential problem if we're scheduled at 3:30 and if someone's late, and then, so a couple of things I just heard. Commissioner Moon uses the word misuse. I don't see being late as misuse, right? I don't know if there's a better word than that. And then Commissioner Moon also brought up there's a deficit. And I'm trying to understand if somebody pays for the field, and I understand you guys want to maximize usage, but if the field's paid for, and I don't know if anybody's looked at the field recently, it's pretty chopped up. It's not in very good shape. There's big signs, it's closed. Part of it is the season, it's not prime time. But sometimes less is more with the field use, meaning if there's a couple times a week because someone like me is late from work to get to the field and there's less people running around on the field, that's not always a negative, especially in the rainy season. So if it's paid for and it's not being used, I don't think that's a negative. Like if soccer comes in, they're going to use it, tear it up, great, but you're still netting the same amount of money for use of the field. So that's just something I wanted everybody to kind of think about. Maybe kind of chill out on the whole, oh, they're not here at 3:30, because 3:30, I'm telling you, I do it. It's very hard to get, you got to park your car. Do you park and then walk in from the big lot, or do you park it over by Del Mar and wait for the light to change and get over there and then go up your hill pull the wagon with all your stuff in it? It's not very easy. So that's just, if we could be a little like having these rules, let's just maybe relax a little bit. We're trying to herd cats half the time with these kids. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for your time and your thoughts. Appreciate it. Yes, sir.
My name's Jim. I live in Tiburon. I'm Shannon's husband. I'm here to speak on behalf of, I guess I would want some more clarification on understanding sport of the season and time of the field use. In the language of sport, I get sport of the season is, it seems like, does that mean that during the sport of the season in the spring, when it's sport of the season is allocated for lacrosse, that soccer doesn't get a chance to play on the field during that period of time?
Basically, my understanding is that lacrosse submits their schedule as sport in season. Soccer will want to have certain times, but in case of overlap or conflict, that sport in season will prevail. So lacrosse will get that time and soccer would not. And the opposite is true during the fall.
Okay, so in the case where if lacrosse wanted to use the field in the fall, but it was sport of the season for soccer,
Correct.
they wouldn't have access to the field.
If
So
there's a
that-
conflict, that's correct.
Are these guidelines to be put in place? Are these time blocks, optimizing the use of the field? Is this for the benefit of either club to be able to share in those other seasons to optimize the use, meaning that spring soccer could use this field in the spring and lacrosse could then use the field in the fall together collectively to optimize the field? Or is that?
No, I think it's just that there's precious time from 3:30 to sun to dark. And there's obviously more demand for that field than the field. And so as a public policy for the town to maximize the usage of that field for Tiburon kids, that we should use the field from 3:30 to sundark, as opposed to starting something, let's say at 4 or 4:15. There's just all that field time that is just not utilized, that no one is being able to use by starting a little bit later. So that's the rationale.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is the reasoning for the change in the language, is the reasoning so that the field can be optimized more for shared usage?
I mean, yeah, generally that should hopefully happen. Yeah.
So that soccer has a chance to come in?
Well, if it can't be used, then the policy the idea is that from a town's perspective and public policy, if someone can't use it at a certain time, other organizations should be able to use it. So that's the main primary reason for the time blocks to start at 3:30 instead of 4 or 4:30.
Okay, and so if the field is being rented at an hourly rate of $80 an hour by the user group, and that rate starts at 3:30, am I missing something that whether they?
It's really not about the rate, at least this language change. The rate is regardless of how much of the field you use. But the reasoning behind this is not to maximize rate or dollars. It's really to maximize use of the field time for the kids. So this would be an egregious example, but let's say one organization says, I want 3:30 to 6:30 every day, but they just they come at 5 and they use only half of the field. That would be that's not sort of good public policy, because obviously there was a lot of time and field time wasted during that time. So we're just trying to enforce that if you're going to use the field, and we should maximize the usage of that field for Tiburon kids starting at 3:30.
Okay.
That's the purpose.
And has there been, excuse me for asking one other maybe stupid question, but is there any kind of a penalty that's been written into place if for an example that the guideline of field optimism, the time slot isn't made?
The only penalty is that if it's systematic and repeated, that the town manager can determine that they're not adhering to the policy. So And if that's the case, then they would lose sport and season status for the following season,
Okay.
which doesn't necessarily mean they would lose their ability to use the field. It's just that in terms of conflict situations, the town manager would have discretion of who could use it at that time.
Okay.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Great.
Thanks.
Thanks for your time. Thanks for your questions. We're good. Any other comments in chambers? Okay, we'll close public comment and we will open this to discussion. Do you want me to start? Sure. So I was a coach for Tiburon soccer for many years, coaching on many fields around the Tiburon, Corte Madera metro area, and I was also a middle school, high school, and college lacrosse player. So this is my background for everybody. I do find this second paragraph, I know what you guys are trying to do, but starting with it, if an organization is found to be repeatedly not fully utilizing the field, I do find that, I know the intent is capacity utilization, so to speak, in a kind of operational standpoint. I think it is a little tough. I think I get the intent, but yeah, if you have a team that's like a bunch of first graders and you can start at 4 because your volunteer coach is available at 4, and they're going to go 4 to 5. That's great. And every day or whatever they're 3 days a week, or if they're doing 2 days a week. I kind of get that. I get the goal of trying to maximize the blocks, but it's not for soccer rec. And also I was a rec soccer coach, right? So not competitive, kind of boys that are like, okay, I'll come and play. So they were, I think they were 60-minute practices. So, and those were 7th and 8th graders. So I think that it's trying to shoehorn it. I get the desire to capacity, but I also, it's a public good. And I also think this was going to be, I think there's going to be people out there going, oh, they're not there. Call the town manager. And I think it's just ripe for a lot of angst and a lot of this. I think I guess a question on this is, and I don't think you guys mentioned it earlier, I think in some comments, is what was broken and what are we trying to fix? So the broken part was that the soccer had some excess demand in the spring, definitely not in the fall. Lacrosse isn't using any time in the fall. You can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm trying to remember this. And that they're pretty close to their hours of how much they've kind of, they're donated in time and kind of like, so they're really close in terms of over a year period of time, both the fall and the spring, of how much they're using it. So this is trying to give them a couple more hours on the areas, on the corners, to try to, in the time corners, to try to give them more access, trying to just improve the scheduling there. But with that, potentially you're going to increase the cost of everything to do that. And does that make sense? I can't remember as a coach when I needed to show up. I know for the older kids, we showed up later because that's what happens. And the younger kids, when we'd coach at Bel Air, but that was soccer at the school. It would start right at 3:30 because the kids were out at 3:15 and they're right there and they just roll out and they start playing soccer. So I don't know. That's kind of where I'm sitting in the comments. I get our intent and I know that it's important and it is a great asset, but is maximizing utilization. We're not making widgets.
Right.
Do you have thoughts about how you would, like what you would change there? Is it just the requirement? Yeah, maybe just say what you would change.
Well, I don't, again, I know we're trying to solve a problem there. I guess I would try to figure out like how we can figure it out on the fringes and make it, and on the areas and make that, how that makes sense. But I think I think that's really, my guess is that if we push this up to town council, they'd also say like, that's really hard to implement. Because it's like, okay, it's up to discretion and what's 50% and what does that really mean? And I think it's hard. I know that, again, from a public policy standpoint, I think it's hard to implement. Again, I know the intent was to try to solve this kind of a little bit of like, hey, we need a couple more hours, and it wasn't that much, right? It's pretty close. What was trying to remember what you had said in the last meeting about.
Well, I don't think the intent of this was to like get the other team more hours. The intent of this was just to make sure the field's utilized. Because they're both requesting it in those hours and just not wanting to waste the resource. I think they actually did sort of agree to get soccer a few more hours, I think directly anyway. So that wasn't what this was going.
Okay, so there was kind of a through collaboration, they were able to identify some additional hours
Is
to
that right,
change some
Mike?
things.
I think they did.
Well, yeah, I mean, there was a verbal sort of acknowledgement that they would try to give more hours here, but there was nothing specific around that.
Right. So do we need to be as prescriptive on doing that? Do we feel that that's needed, or? And it is the balance of, I mean, I don't know the split between, and maybe you guys can, are any of your coaches paid in lacrosse?
Some are,
Some are. Okay. Fair.
most of them are moms and dads.
Yeah.
And then a lot of them are that they're high school students.
Right. Oh, so that's like trying to get them to, got it.
You're helping the kids.
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's a little bit understanding that of the coaches and who they're staffing out on McKegney.
Right.
I don't know. I'll stop talking.
Yeah, no, and thanks. No, I thank you for the work on this. I know this is not an easy one to work on, and we've done some adjustments to McKegney Green policy over the years, and that's why I was happy to not be on this subcommittee. Because we learned, a few lessons in terms of town seeing this and more the community, like, oh, wow, this, reacting to changes we had made, even though well-intentioned. I guess the flip side of that, extending that is, I don't want to create, I love this term, a perverse incentive to like extend your use beyond, what you normally would use it, just because you don't want to get penalized for that. So it seems like maybe there's a few ways to go about it. I didn't hear necessarily like objections overall to the blocks of time. I assume this split came from conversations on, what the teams are using the most. So, I mean, I could see getting rid of the second paragraph in this section and just, maybe giving the town manager, and the paragraph before that, where it gives town manager the exercise sound judgment, we could say just in determining the field use allocation for overlapping times, you could also probably flip something in there with respect to the blocks of time. Alternatively, how critical is it to have these blocks of time delineated in the field use policy? This is a question. It may not sound like it, but how critical is it to delineate those blocks of time? Because it sounded more like, it wasn't going to be changing all that much, like from day to day. It was more concerned about like on certain days of the week, we may not start until 4, or this might need to shift a little bit. So, because blocks of time were not in the previous policy, unless I missed that. So I was just curious about the background on and the desire to insert that concept into the policy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, ultimately, it comes down to maximizing the public good in terms of the time to be able to use it. So an extreme example would be because the time you could use the field is like 3:30 to 6:30, right? But if an organization says I could use it from 4:30 to 6:30 or 4 to 6:30, but I don't want to use it at 3:30, there's that time that's just lost, and it's just inefficient, because there are other Tiburon kids and organizations that would love that time, but if it's only half an hour, they can't use it effectively. And so the language may need some work, and I think some of these comments are good, but the goal is to try to maximize utilization of the time of the field. And if that could be worded in a different way, that could be done in a way. And one idea I had was, the town manager has discretion ultimately to approve the schedule. So maybe another approach could be that in his discretion of approving that schedule, that maximizing time and usage of the field will be a consideration of him approving those final schedules. So that's another way to potentially do it.
I like, if I may, I like that approach. I think giving discretion on that, but calling out like the time consideration. So, you know, everyone who's utilizing this, I'll probably know more about this in a few years when my kids are playing these sports. But, you know, I think that gives that's a good way to strike the balance. You know, just to make sure that that is called out. And so both sports are respecting that as they set the schedule for the season, you know, they're considering maximizing the time as opposed to just assuming you have it for basically starting at 3:30 for the rest of the evening. Do have a question for you on the dates in here. I didn't hear anyone object about having to submit a schedule by these dates. So I assume both leagues were comfortable with that.
These were both agreed by both of them.
Cool. Awesome. That's great. So I support that concept of you know, making sure it's called out in here that the town manager has that discretion. And I did have one last question. As part of the second paragraph, post decision to be sort of the body to hear that appeal. I don't know if there's precedent for that anywhere else. I don't want to undercut our lovely commission here. But I just, you know, if we are kind of tinkering with the language in that second paragraph or maybe striking it, I just, you know, that probably is something, well, I'd love for our commission to have that authority. I could see that being problematic as it moves forward. So just wanted to, I guess that's an open question if there's precedent for that.
I don't know the answer to
Not
that.
that I'm aware of.
Yeah, I mean, we could change that to town council if that.
It probably should be.
Yeah.
Typically, town council will have the final decision, but town council would also wants to hear post's recommendation on it as well. So.
Right, but I think we're also hearing, at least for me, was like that second paragraph on page, whatever that is, under
Page 4.
page 4. I think that's, I mean, in my opinion, if the field was 100% utilized from 4 to 6:30 all the time by one entity, or I'm fine with that. I'm okay that 30 minutes on each day are missed. Okay. But it makes it, if it makes it easy and logistics and all the other things that are going on and that's predictable and planned, I'm okay with that. I think or if somebody goes like, hey, we can only do 4 to 6:30 on Monday through Thursday, but you can have the whole field all day you want on Friday. Okay. I mean, I think that being too prescriptive creates challenges. Again, as a coach, I was always told just to show up. And I'm like, really? I can't make that over there, but I guess I'll have to, or I'll be late, or actually, I think some practices for some of the rec stuff was at 4, which was helpful for soccer. But I also know in the fall, I mean, McKegney Green on 5 o'clock on a Friday was pretty empty. 4:30. I mean, so it's interesting that they could be reserved by and paid for by the league, but if nobody's got a demand on it, I mean, lacrosse doesn't have probably a desire on an October afternoon half your players are playing soccer. So, I mean, it's just
their kids play both sports.
yeah. So I think it's again.
So Tim, is your suggestion to strike the last sentence of the first paragraph, like remove the mention of time blocks and strike the second red line paragraph and change it to something like town manager has discretion to make decisions about scheduling of the field, but should give priority to sport and season when there's a conflict and should give consideration to maximizing use of the field?
I think that sounds about right. I wasn't tracking super close. So that sounds right. That captures everything I think we just talked about. So my inclination here is I'm not so attached to any
particular outcome, except for that we get this done and voted on and sent
Yeah.
off our desks today. So I'm willing
Agree.
to consider anything. I just
I-
really want to get this decided and voted.
Okay, so I see that a paragraph before the change, it says the town manager or his or her designee shall exercise sound judgment in determining the field use allocation for two or more equal priority groups requesting conflicting or overlapping times of use. The first tiebreaker for sports-related uses shall be sport in season. So I think that's the place where we can insert the consideration for maximizing field use. So we could say,
Maybe, oh, sorry, I don't want to cut you off.
Yeah,
if
go
you-
ahead, yeah.
No, yeah, I mean, like overlapping times of use and then, you know, in like right at the end of that, we could use a semicolon or whatever the proper punctuation would be. And then in that spot, add in maximizing use and consideration of specified time blocks, something to that effect.
Does anybody ever try to get time with during soccer?
No, we did ask lacrosse several times if they had an interest or any kind of desire to get fall playtime, and they said no, so.
Oh, that's not true. We did actually, John actually who's on the phone has asked Kim for time in the fall, but typically we get it too late or we don't get it, and then we usually say, well, that's fine, that's all right.
Oh, but in our conversations, I asked you guys and you said no.
No, said that we have requested it. We don't request as much as they request in the spring, but there are several times that we requested and they usually just say that it gets too late or we don't get that much of it, or we don't get the day that we want. Like I think John wanted it for a Wednesday this last fall and didn't get it. But we have asked, we just don't ask for the
Works.
amount that soccer asks for us in the spring, so it's not as big of a issue, I guess. But, and I will say, the time blocks is something that we've never talked about. That's how, like, the time blocks is nothing lacrosse has ever done or said that we were in favor of. And I think somebody mentioned that that was agreed upon across all parties and that.
that was not agreed upon, no.
Upon by,
That was never said, no. Okay, so I have maybe some language suggestion here. So after two or more equal priority groups requesting conflicting or overlapping times of use, period, consideration will be given for maximizing field, maximizing the time the field is used. And then the first tiebreaker for sports-related uses shall be sport in season. You could take out the last sentence in the first red line paragraph. So scheduling in the spring shall be in blocks of time, so take that concept out. And then that next paragraph, we could just then also take out. And so what that does is gives the town manager some discretion around a public policy of wanting to maximize field time, but it's not prescriptive, as people have commented around certain blocks of time. So I think it accomplishes both.
Sounds great to me.
Both
And it
goals.
also speaks to if lacrosse has requests for fall, that they be considered
That's
and
all.
that the town manager decides. Yeah.
And to make some nice incremental changes, like we shouldn't not forget all the other red line changes. There's not a lot, but it's helpful and beneficial, right? Like taking out things and adding the Bs and being clear about recognized lacrosse. And so I think that's all the other changes on the pages. We'll keep those all.
And
Yes,
Can I, and then can I call it one more thing?
Yeah.
Which I love, feel closer being online. Oh, man, Thanksgiving Day this year, we all get out there, you know, ready to play. Close signs everywhere. It was kind of like some moments of freak out, and I'm not sure who got called, but you know, folks were out there playing. It was a beautiful day.
Right.
And so I remember thinking on that day, Man, I wish I could pull this up online. David, will there be any like problems with that from your staff perspective or town council perspective on that requirement? I think it's a wonderful one.
Not town council staff, Patrick and I have talked about it.
Yeah.
And we will assign someone to be in charge of that and update it.
Awesome. Thank you.
So I'd like to make a motion that we approve the recommended changes on the red line with Commissioner Moon's changes that he just made, as he just stated into the record. And we'll forward to town staff for memorialization.
Yes, as soon as we get that, we'll get that scheduled on the next available town council meeting for them to consider.
Want to second that?
Second.
I'll take roll call. Chair Holmbrook,
Yes.
Vice Chair Moon,
Yes.
Chair Burr.
Yes, Commissioner. Yes.
I mean, Commissioner Burr, I'm
Yes.
sorry.
What do you call you, Chair? Yeah, sorry.
And Commissioner Judge.
Yes.
Oh, and also part of this motion was to dissolve the subcommittee. Is that still?
And I'd like to
With
also.
prejudice.
With prejudice.
Just kidding.
Nice. And it will also we'll dissolve this subcommittee. Thank you for that clarification. All right. And thanks you guys for working on this.
I hope,
Thank you.
I think this addressed everybody's concerns, I hope, and I think it gets everybody what they want, hopefully.
Yeah, cool. Thank you guys again.
Thank you, Mike.
All right. Onward. Oh, some quickies, I hope here. Well, at least one. The next item,
The ayes for that vote.
All,
The vote, actually, I just missed that.
yeah, you just
We
missed
just
it.
did it.
For nothing, for zip. All right, the next action item is on creating a subcommittee on Zielinski Park. Is there anything in the staff or am I just kicking this off?
Yeah, nothing really in the staff. This is just another area here behind Town Hall that's been developed, part of the library upgrade. And it is a very valuable asset here for the community. We're starting to get a lot more events that take place here on the grassy area and also within the corridor here between the library and Town Hall. There have been a lot of talk from residents that would like to see some type of play area or amenities here at Zielinski Park. So the chair had asked for this item to be on the agenda to create a subcommittee to work with staff, town council, and go over the Parks Master Plan to see what kind of, and see what the community would like to have here at the park.
Right, so in the just to tee this up, then we can open up for comments, is that in the Parks Plan, it was explicitly mentioned Zielinski Park. And it is a great center of kind of town piece that we have here, right behind Town Hall. And I have found that working with both the library and the town they're two separate entities a little bit. So maybe having a subcommittee work on that, and then I'll propose some items in working with both of those entities, as well as kind of some other additional area to behind the parking lot here in Chase that may become a new building, which is exciting as well. So that's why I wanted to create a subcommittee to just try to help move that forward and help support staff and make recommendations to town council on any policy or recommendations that we have on that. So any questions on what? Nope. Okay. Is there anybody in chambers who would like to make a comment on this action item? Yes? Well, please step forward.
Hello, I'm Jenna. I live in Tiburon. I'm with the group Parents for Parks and Rec, and we submitted our letter outlining some of the suggested action items. And creating a play area at Zielinski Park is definitely one of them. So we were proposing as an immediate kind of step to do a feasibility study to see what that would entail. And we really would like it to be a very inclusive playground. I'm not sure if you've heard about Magical Bridge playgrounds. They're designed for people of all abilities, for different age levels. There's one in Novato that opened in the past year at Pioneer Park, past year and a half. It's a wonderful playground. It feels different, like you go in and it feels better for everybody, regardless of their ability level. It's just got a lot more diversity in terms of the equipment, and it's not just your standard play structure that you see in every playground. There's just a lot of like bespoke elements, and it's super fun. It feels safer for everybody. So we'd love for the town to look at that as a serious consideration. But we're very supportive of the creation of a subcommittee to explore this possibility. So
Great.
thank you.
Thank you. Any comments online, David?
I see none.
Okay. Any discussion on this? I know that we all have some full plates, so I recognize that. And I know we're shorthanded for at least another month, right? 1 month or two. But I would like to kind of help move this forward a little bit, just because the community has really kind of asked for it, and it is a priority piece. So, questions, concerns, gray hairs. I have gray hair, sorry.
I'll just share that
That's okay. It's all great.
I hesitate to share this because I don't want to push this on anyone else, but I am at max capacity on volume on subcommittees. Because each of them involves like a lot of community engagement, and it's already encroaching on a part-time job. So that's my challenge here.
Oh, totally. No, and I want you all to feel comfortable saying that there's no, but yeah, it is a part, the pay is great though.
Yeah.
I was chiming in if I can. I mean, I think this is an important park. We're out there today, just kind of taking a look at it. It's been cool to see. I mean, it feels like a lot of folks hanging out in that spot. And those kids are at the library all the time, so it does make a lot of sense. I'm also at bandwidth capacity as well. I'd be happy to be part of the subcommittee unless Commissioner Moon would like to be part of it, just to move this forward. And I think this would be ripe for a new commissioner to come in, and we could make adjustments then when that 5th commissioner is appointed and joins us, hopefully by our March meeting. So Commissioner Moon, defer to you if you have an interest in this. But I mean, I'd be happy to be part of it just to help get this started and move this forward.
Otherwise, the alternative would be to start it in March, but you'd still have to have 2 people on it.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm really at my limit in terms of capacity for any other subcommittees. The Lineal Park Committee is very involved, given the multi-aspect parts of it.
Sure. Totally get that. Do it.
Yeah. I move to create a subcommittee to review and recommend improvements at Zielinski Park, including a possible play area. I think that's the motion.
I second that motion.
Roll call, Chair Hornbook,
Yes.
Vice Chair Moon,
Yes.
Commissioner Burr,
Yes.
and Commissioner Judge.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay. And now we need to staff it.
Second motion, I'd move to, can we do them both at the same time? We have to do one at a time, right?
We can do both.
You can do both.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
Commissioner Judge, maybe you want to make the motion?
I'm not sure what we're moving.
Question of who the 2 commissioners on this are going to be on the Zielinski.
Can I make the motion myself? Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Okay, I'd make a motion to include Chair Hornbrook and then Commissioner Burr on to be the subcommittee for Zielinski Park.
Sorry, I missed that you were willing.
I was willing it. Yeah. I was just quiet. Second.
Second. Yeah.
Second.
We all second.
I don't think he ever said he was willing. I just assumed that. So speak now if that's not the case.
All right.
Call Chair Hornbook,
Yes.
Vice Chair Moon,
Yes.
Commissioner Burr,
Yes.
and Commissioner Judge.
Yes,
All right.
Motion passes.
Forward.
thank you.
Cool. Yeah. All right. Tiburon Mini Park improvements. David.
Chair, Staff report for this project is for post commission to recommend for town council consideration at a future meeting to request town staff hire a landscape designer, provide a preliminary design of requested amenities from the community for the 3 mini parks. In the past, what attached to this staff report, we had a project out there, the bike repair station, and it kind of followed the same aspect of what we're looking for here. We hired a landscape architect who came to town council, provided some preliminary designs, received community feedback, and went back and forth and brought a final design that everybody agreed upon. Once that preliminary design was agreed upon, then we went out and produced final biddable plans to go set those amenities in place. So we believe that at this point, it would be advantageous to go to town council and hire an architect. And it's not a full-blown plan, but it gives you a nice color picture of what the final product would look like. And we would hold, many community meetings, come report back to Post, and at the end, with Post's recommendation, we go to town council and say, this is what Post recommends and the community likes. And then that nice colored plan would be developed into a final plan that town council would be able to authorize staff to go out and advertise and construct once we have a bidder in place or contractor in place. So this is what the action item is here, is just for Post Commission to recommend for town council to consider a request from staff to hire a landscape architect just to provide some preliminary plans based on community input for these 3 mini parks.
And though that community input would potentially also come from the Post Commission and the other survey information, other pieces that Commissioner Burr and I are working on.
Correct. So they would get you're doing all your boots on the ground. So you're doing a lot of the work out there. And of course, the public forums would be here at the Post Commission.
Great. Do you guys have any questions for David on this? Or
Do you have a sense of the rough cost of the landscape architect contract?
The bike repair station was a little over 20,000.
And then this would ultimately, we would right now be sending the recommendation that town council approve that cost, or how does it work?
No, so you're basically, the recommendation here is for town staff to go request this
From town
council
Oh.
to basically allow us to go out and hire a landscape architect to provide us with to work with the Post Commission, the subcommittees, and the community to come up with some nice pictures of what we want those areas to look like. And then that's really the first step, because without a set of plans, we're really kind of just throwing ideas and nothing's going to come to fruition. So we need a set of plans here, and it's not a big complicated, it's just a 1-sheet color, kind of like the example we have attached to the staff report that would guide us on what we'd like the final product to look like.
yeah, so I'd recommend if on the second attachment for those who are listening and other is to look at that. It's called Tiburon Bike Kiosk. And we did this back in 2019 when I think my first year on Post, maybe.
One more question on this, David, is considering that the firm that did the master plan, like that did all of that work around the master plan, basically drew some drawings. I know they're not as detailed as a landscape architect would provide, but they're a start. They're a pretty informed start. Does it help shortcut the cost that we already have a bunch of drawings and possible plans for some of these?
Typically, if we go out with an RFP for a preliminary design, that consultant is not able to bid on developing the final plans. So a lot of the times they know that the higher amount of money they can make developing the final plans is a lot higher than developing these preliminary plans. So sometimes they don't want to go out and bid on these low cost preliminary designs. They hold out to bid on the final product.
Yeah, but I think I think
Yeah,
Commissioner Judge's question was, would they leverage and does that lower the cost? So you said, because I mean, I think this was done before I think you had started it, or you had just were starting.
Yeah, same time.
So I
yeah.
think that some of this may have been, I think it was, we don't know the exact cost on that piece, but I think, yes, I think we should hope that the landscape designer would look at at the plan and go like, oh, what did they say? And almost like, if they didn't look at I mean, Tim and I are going to be doing an individual survey online to each of the different neighborhoods to say like, what would you like in your park? And then part of this came from a discussion with the town manager who's like, yeah, we can put stuff in these parks, but I don't know where to put them. I need a drawing to be able to tell me where to put a drinking fountain, a bench, a pergola. I mean, all the things that you guys are looking at for the Blackie's pasture and all those different areas, they're going to need a design to say like, where do we put these additional amenities?
yeah, yeah. And
That's all.
my question is simpler than that. It's just, I mean, it's what you were saying, but it's just, can we make sure that whoever gets that contract for the landscape design is using and looking at the work produced in the master plan?
They must,
Okay.
because that's the guiding principles, the framework of each of those
Not
parks.
just that framework, but also the drawings that they did,
Those example
Yeah.
drawings that are in the appendices, yeah, they'll be looking at those, but I will guarantee the layout will probably be way different.
Sure,
'Cause
thank
people-
you.
Yeah.
Cool. Yep. Thank you. Any questions from people here in chambers? Come on up, Jenna. Yeah. No, yeah, it's a different action item. You can talk as much for each different action item as you want.
I just was wondering, is that $20,000 per park or $20,000 for all?
We don't have an idea what it's gonna cost, but that,
Oh.
yeah, so we're gonna end up going with an RFP out. And then we'll choose the landscape architect based on their experience and then negotiate a price.
Okay, but the bike station.
Yeah.
That little area, just to.
That's the plan right there.
So creating the preliminary design, which is kind of like a vision document, was 20,000.
You have to think about it also. They charge for every meeting they come to, every community outreach workshop they put, when they're out here in the evenings presenting to Post. They've got 3 consultants sitting here. It's after hours wage. So all of that adds up. We just added 2 1-hour community workshops for the traffic study, and that increased our bill by almost $10,000.
So the creation of these renderings would entail public input sessions, workshops and
Yes.
whatnot. So it's not
Yes.
just them visiting the site and coming up with some ideas. They
No,
need to
they're-
engage the public fully in the process.
Absolutely.
Can I ask a follow-up question? Are we done with?
No, you can ask
Is it
questions.
okay? I mean, given that the Parks Master Plan has already done a good amount of this, we don't have to do that much more, right? Like that was a year's worth of community engagement and intake from the community.
Yes, but it was a decision-making framework. So it was like, okay, so Belveron Park needs better signage. It needs to be some activation in some of the area and maybe some activation in the back area. I'm just using Belveron as an example. The town staff needs to be told like, well, okay, so great, we can do that. Where do you want the signage? Where do you want the drinking fountain? Where do you want the new pittosporums that are going to be over on the east side of the park? They need to be told that. I mean, that's what this drawing is that we're seeing on the screen here, right? You see all these circles and it says like, this is these plants. And we literally had a very lengthy conversation just about like the plants and where we were going to put these things for this drawing up here in post.
So you're saying this community engagement would take it to the next step, which is we already know what people want.
Yes.
It would involve just where do they want it and how to do it. Yeah.
Yes, and it's
Okay.
getting the things moving forward and getting the rubber on the road, as opposed to like hand waving and going like, hey, we can do this and we can do that. And so another example would be at Cypress Hollow, great park, very established, right? Doesn't need a lot of like, hey, you need to do this. But we have to decide, do we want to remove any of those cypress trees? How are we going to put down new sod on those? Do we want, where will the fence go? There's a back area behind the play area that, do we want to activate that for adult play area? Do we want to continue to expand that for more kids play area? I don't know. And do we want to make, use the hills that are naturally could be a slide area? Do we do something there? I mean, there's a whole like, what's the best way to do that in a pretty established park, right? It's not even a it's not an open canvas. It's a pretty like, this is what it needs to look like. So there needs to be some, at least some pieces moving forward, because in the past, the town has said like, okay, you guys need better grass here. We'll just seed it. Well, we seed it, and then two or 3 years later, it just completely, it's mud again, because they need to kind of churn it up, resod it, and figure out what they want to do with these roots that are coming up on the bottom of Cypress Hollow Park. And then, I mean, everything for Bel Air Park, which is the other mini park, is like with the combination of, there is a stormwater construction project that could go through there, and there's going to be redoing the storm drain that's down on the southern part of that park, because it is a big drainage area as well. What do we want to do there? Where do we place any amenities, or are there any amenities at all? And the public would like to have a comment on that. And I think that's very important.
Thanks for that.
Yeah, yeah.
was
Is that helpful?
Clarifying, yeah,
Yeah,
thank
for
you.
sure.
Okay,
Sorry,
well,
Jenna. I
it
went into
feels
your 3 minutes.
a little bit of overkill in some regards, but also could be amazing if the town approves it and is willing to spend money to invest in a process like that. So I think our group would be really supportive. I hope it doesn't get bundled, though. It's like an all or nothing thing. So maybe if there's not a desire to fund all of that right now, we could look at
Yeah, and I think
park, focus on Cypress Hollow, where there's already a lot of consensus around what could happen there. There's already existing playground there that really just needs upgrading, and, stagger them.
Agreed. I think that would be the time, would be when this action item comes up at town council. We're doing a ton of work as post commissioners, and I just want to move these balls forward
Yeah.
and to memorialize our efforts, to activate those efforts,
Right.
and put the onus of the decision making with the town council to say like, all right, you want to move fast on these things, let's do it. And they might just say like, hey, let's simplify this. We're just going to put some stuff where we want. I mean, John Wellner said that in the meeting. He's like, let's put some benches here. What's the big deal? Okay, if John says, and the town council says, we want to put a bench here, town staff has to put the bench there. I mean, I'm using a small example.
This is just making sure that there's like no excuse not to do something.
Yeah.
Clear plans.
Yeah, we want to
Questions
make
are
a
answered.
recommendation to move forward.
And I think having renderings would be so helpful. These kind of site diagrams and site plans are great, but having actual renderings that show they're kind of more of a realistic portrayal.
Well, I mean,
of what
that's
equipment look
pretty
like.
much where, like, if you go to the bike station now, that's what it looks like. So,
Oh, but I mean like an architectural rendering, which shows
yeah,
the
but then that's,
structure in the space with people using it.
Gotcha. Understood.
Yeah, I think that'd be really powerful.
Okay.
And yeah, we'll get our families showing up at the meetings.
Great.
So
Thank you.
thank you.
Sure. Any comments online, David?
I see none.
Okay. Other discussion on this action item?
I look at it as this is a step that has to happen, if I'm not mistaken. And so I think we all want to move this forward. So I am supportive of action here. And at the bare minimum, making sure as we're getting ahead of the town's budgeting process, that this is top of mind, including the mini parks, as this. So I personally would support this, if anyone has a motion.
So I'd like to make a or do you want to make it? No,
Go for
okay,
it.
so I'll like to make a motion that we recommend to town council to consider to request staff hire a landscape designer to provide preliminary design and requested amenities from the community as well as post for the 3 Tiburon mini parks.
I second.
Chair Holmbrook,
Yes.
Vice Chair Moon, Commissioner Burr,
Yes.
Commissioner Judge.
Yes.
the last action item is in this same vein, and I'll tee it up a little bit. So as a post commission, we have done a lot of like locations and looking at kayak and sup launches. And in fact, even before I joined town or post in 2015, there was a budget item actually to look and put a kayak launch. What I'd like to do is make a recommendation that post says to the town, we recommend that town council engages with town staff to analyze and look at previous studies and conduct and look at locations and make recommendations to town council in a future meeting and to make that decision. Again, it's asking town council to make a decision on that. And it is very clear in their last meeting that they had was this is a big priority that they want. They're like, let's just do it. Why haven't we done this? And it's like, yes, your Parks, Open Space and Trails Commission has actually made a number of recommendations and we haven't moved. It just hasn't been bubbled up to town council because town council either they weren't informed enough of it for whatever reasons. Doesn't matter. We're here. We are. We're here. We are. We are. We are. I don't know. So David, anything else you want to add to that?
Yeah, so we do have, a couple studies we attached. We had a real formal one done there at the Elephant Rock back in 2021 or 2022, I believe. And we have one, also a report done by the Post Commission, a couple done by the Post Commission, but one, the two nice areas, one there on San Rafael, that little park that we own, Cypress Grove, I believe is the name. Commissioner Burr, you figured out what the name of the beach is. We had a little conversation today. So, we will analyze this and come up with a recommendation. I do know the most ideal area or spot would be Main Street at Beach there where Belvedere jurisdiction is. But the area there right off of San Rafael looks very nice as well.
At San Rafael Avenue in East Shore? In Belvedere?
No,
Oh,
San Rafael and
Tiburon Boulevard.
Tiburon. Yeah, we own a little parklet
there,
with
that's right.
bench out there and beach.
So I'd like to just move,
Mhm.
so that's any discussions on those? Or questions, I should say, actually, and then we'll go to
Oh,
town.
questions,
And
yeah.
then we'll go to public comment, and then we'll discussions, and then, yes, sir.
No questions.
No questions, no questions. Okay.
How does this overlap with the priorities thing you're putting together as part of the master plan?
So this, I believe,
It's in there.
it's in there. It's in there, and it's one of the priorities for the SUP launch. So I believe it's in the Excel sheet, Chair.
Yeah.
That we sent over.
So it's.
So is it this is just a point of emphasis because
Yes,
you're already doing that, but
we're
saying,
already
let's-
doing it.
Let's do it even more. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah. Putting kind
Well,
of the
again, it's-
exclamation point.
Okay.
It's to
behind
get town council to say like, instruct town staff to use these information and to make a decision. And if they, in their points, say like, yeah, okay, town staff, give us a decision by April or whatever the council would like to decide. But I think it's important for the community to take the information, the very valuable information that Post and others have worked on, and to push it up to town council and to make some decisions and move the ball forward.
And it's perfect timing right before the CIP.
Right. So, okay. Another question, Mr. Moon?
No.
Okay. Any comments here in chambers? Yes, sir. Step up.
Waited this long,
Thank
Hi,
you.
I'm Stuart Henley.
Yes, Stuart.
Tiburon,
We've
I
never met Stuart
emailed
face
all
to
of
face.
you. I really appreciate everything you're doing. The bay is a great resource. I would love to have for the public to have more access to it for kayaking or supping or whatever small watercraft they want. I think that's great. Lots of great ideas in some of the previous plans I've seen. I think a great framework to think about where to put it is around parking, around is it open 12 months of the year or not. I think that Santa Rafael location, Santa Rafael and Tiburon is actually closed half the year, which I think creates challenges, and I don't think it has parking. I think Angel Island is a great resource, so I'd love to get access to Angel Island. So I think having a spot on the southern tip of Tiburon that gives you access to Angel Island, and also you can go to Sausalito, or, you know, it's a kind of centrally located, and it's protected. Part of it is protected. If you're able to get something in the harbor, like at 41 Main and Corinthian, that's protected. That would be, you know, advantageous as well. And it's not subject to the same, you know, high and low tides, which can make, you know, launching craft difficult. So I really appreciate everything you're doing. I would love to have easier access to the water. I don't believe there is actually any reasonably accessible launch spot for most people in all of Tiburon. The only place I know of is Paradise, but that has challenges. I know lots of folks probably couldn't launch their watercraft from that cement structure there. So I really encourage you to keep pushing it forward, and thank you for everything you do.
Thank you.
Thanks, Stuart.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Nicole, Tiburon resident, and I agree with the sub plan. It's like here just to add more community engagement to it, the topic. So yes, we'll be a town council also trying to push this forward. Interested in other ideas out of the box. We could buy Keel Cove over there by Angel Island to launch there. I think that's for sale at the moment. Do you know that, like right across from Ayala Cove?
I'm not familiar with
It's a
that one.
small price point, but yes.
It's a price point, but but yeah, I think finding ways to get that. I also see a beach at low tide over by the railroad depot. That could be good. I see people have dogs there. I've seen people actually launching their paddle boards from above that drainage ditch. I take pictures. I can see it from my house. So if you ever want to see photos. And then I saw also in the old information that you've posted with the agenda and the staff report that this was going to cost about $250,000 a couple of years ago. And then if they wanted to add parking to have like another 120,000, I'm concerned that that number might be a lot more now. So there's also a sense of urgency to this, that if we continue to push it down the road, it will continue to raise the cost. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nicole. Any comments online?
Yes, we do. Andrew?
Oh, see if it works, and if not, have.
Can you guys hear me okay? Do you got the speakers going?
No, Andrew, we
So,
can't hear you.
Do you want to just put in the chat to call my phone?
Yes. Andrew, can you call Chuck Hornbrook? I'm going to put it in there.
You're talking about Andrew Thompson.
Yeah.
He's got my digits. There he is. You're on, Andrew.
Awesome. Aren't we very resourceful? Your guys are right. Putting a SUP launch is very difficult in Tiburon. Point of clarification, Powell Cove is not for sale. It's the other side of that point, which is for sale, and it would be impossible to launch there. The little seating area that as you go onto Sanford Avenue, which is part of Tiburon, I'd love to see it there because that is actually the Jeannie Thompson secret garden dedicated to my mom. The parking problem is there though. Where are you going to park? Unfortunately, the easiest way and place is Blackie's Pasture. You got all the parking, you can just launch, but you're restricted by the tides. This is going to create controversy, but it's why not consider all the options? If you did a pier 25 yards out
not just one that was stable, floating in the ground, you double your possibility for launch. You would not be so restricted by the tides. Just some ideas brainstorming for you guys.
Terrific. Thank you. Anything else?
That's it.
All right. Thank you for your comments. David, any other comments online?
I see none.
Okay, I'm going to end public comment on this. And then any other discussion? Yeah, so you mentioned San Rafael and Tib Boulevard. Is there any other discussions on this? I do want to make sure that the subcommittee that's focused on this, as well as other activities that are not memorialized on these pieces, like 41 Main Street, as well as collaboration with the city of Belvedere. Charlie from their Parks and Trails Commission is also wanting to engage, because we know that there's other areas potentially on the backside by the yacht club. There's a small beach area down there. So I just want to make sure that all of these are captured, and I believe the town staff but that town staff continues to come back and looking at these, and that we drive to a conclusion. That's my desire, because again, it's something that we've all wanted and desired. And it's not lack of all good intentions within staff and town and post. We just haven't pulled the trigger. So any other comments or discussions on this action item, or shall we make a motion?
Yeah, no, a couple comments. I maybe consider analyzing the previous studies conducted, and just recommend town staff to analyze possible paddleboard sub-launch locations, because I want to make sure, Chair, to your point, that areas that we have discussed as of recent are included and are not unintentionally cut off. We've been working on this issue since I've been on post. We never in those time periods talk about locations such as 41 Main that I recall, and I'm not sure if Stuart brought that to the chair's attention. Thank you, Stuart. Thank you for community engagement. Brilliant. But to uncover an opportunity like that is pretty amazing. So I'm happy that this work continues, because I didn't see that in any of the other previous studies. Maybe it was there. I don't know. And then including the area that we're calling San Rafael Avenue. Just to save my own face, if you recall, it was either the last meeting or 2 meetings ago, I referred to that location as Bramble Beach, which, if you Google that, is apparently the name of it that Google has ascribed to that location. There's even like Google comments on there reviewing it as an excellent place to launch a kayak. Quite amazing. So that is not anywhere I've seen Bramble Beach referred to in official records. But I'm encouraged, so I have a lot of energy behind this. So just happy to move this forward. It sounds like this, town council wants to be in charge of directing staff to do work such as this, if I'm not mistaken. So it seems like this is a needed motion and well-timed as we're looking to implement what was one of clearly most popular items in the master plan and community engagement with a paddleboard sub/kayak launch.
Agreed. Would you like to make a motion?
I would move to recommend town staff to analyze possible paddleboard /sub/kayak launch locations and make a recommendation for town council for consideration at future meetings.
I second that.
Do roll call. Chair Hornbook?
Yes.
Vice Chair Moon?
Yes.
Commissioner Burr?
Yes.
Commissioner Judge?
Yes.
Okay. Sweet. So with that, let's go then quickly through informational items on the different subcommittees that we're on. And then you guys can ask questions. If people in chambers have questions, that would be the time to do that. And then we'll keep moving forward. So Commissioner Burr and I are on the Tiburon Mini Parks Improvement Subcommittee. And the current plan is what we're going to be doing is as hopefully if town council takes up our recommendation, but we will in parallel actually be launching surveys unique to each neighborhood in coordination with town it'll be electronically on a survey by household, so they'll have to, we'll spend some time figuring out the survey instrument. It'll be electronic though, because we don't have the staff to do a paper one. And it would be by household about what amenities they would like at the different parks. And the questions would be based on information that came up from both the park plan as well as the informational kind of not formalized meetings that Commissioner Burr and I have had only at Belveron and at Cypress Hollow Park. So anything else you want to add on that?
No.
Okay. Any questions from other commissioners on that? Nope. I would like to open this up for comments from the community here in Chambers. Yeah, come on down, Jenna.
Yeah, I just was a little, like to hear a little bit more about the surveys. Would they be sent to only to residents that live immediately around that park, or will they be sent to everybody in town?
It's a good question.
They'll be sent to people who would live within a certain distance of each one of those parks. So it wouldn't be people who are, wouldn't be right contingent. Okay, what's the word I'm looking for? Next to a certain park, but it would be people within a circumference around that. Similar to when the town sends out, when you do design review or planning, that they'll send out notices to people. So to be using that kind of methodology, but it will not be to the entire town. So for example, I don't live near any of those 3 mini parks, so I would not get a survey, and you probably wouldn't. Maybe we could, maybe going up to Stewart Drive for Belveron, but he would not, but Commissioner Burr would not receive a survey for Bel Air Mini Park or for Cypress Hollow.
You're posing a question. I do think it's an interesting consideration as to whether or not it's feasible to do the QR code on a piece of paper in the parks, that people who use the parks might have a little bit of input. Clearly, like this is definitely, as we've done community outreach and a lot, thanks to Chair Hornbrook, you know, folks who live nearby want to have a say, but it's a good idea to perhaps have that. I think the QR codes help fuel a lot of engagement on the master plan. So
good suggestion.
Good question.
Yeah. So but in terms of that, it would also just be one of many pieces of the survey that would inform what needs to be added to those parks in specificity that was not captured in the strategic plan.
So it won't be the only thing that dictates what
No.
ends up happening there.
That's correct. But we want to try to avoid as best as possible, and this was raised in the town council meeting, of who is the loudest last voice to show up.
Yeah.
Which then sometimes leads to non-optimized solutions.
Yeah. Just want to point out that Cypress Hollow Park, for instance, is really the only park that is near parking that people throughout town can use. They're the only other playground for young kids is in the lineal park system, but it's far away from parking, so most people don't use it. So Cypress Hollow is heavily used, and it seems like everyone who uses it should be able to weigh in. But I do recognize that immediate neighbors or probably should have a weighted say in a way. I'm not sure if that's the right way to approach it. But anyhow, I hope the circumference is quite wide, because like I live in the upper part of Bel Air. So I would like to be able to weigh in on Bel Air Park, even though I don't live immediately around it. So anyhow, I just hope you keep that in mind when you're designing the survey.
Great. Thank you for your comment. I
Thank you.
appreciate it. Anyone online?
Yes, we do. Linda?
Uh-oh. Do you want to text Linda my phone number?
Hi, sorry about that. I didn't quite hear. But my
add
name
it
is
to
Linda
her?
Sapolsky.
Can you chat it to her?
I can.
I mean,
Linda,
The,
we're having
petition-
some audio
Sorry, can you hear me now?
difficulties here. Can
Hi,
you call
sorry for
our
that.
chair's phone number and we will put you on the mic through his phone?
Yes.
The number is 415-902-7762.
Zoom meeting.
Linda, I don't know if you called the number 415-902-7762.
Hi, yeah, I did call the number, but sorry, can you say the number one more time? Sorry, what is the phone number? I what is the phone number?
She's trying to talk.
Linda, we're not able to hear you, but if you can hear me, if you can call this phone number, we'll be able to hear you. 415-902-7762.
7062. Did you remember that number? Stop it.
Join. I could join the Zoom, and when she speaks
What was the number, Justin?
through my phone.
902, what was it? 7762?
Yeah.
Somebody join on their laptop and we can hear it out of their.
Oh, she's calling me now.
Oh, there we go.
Hello.
Hi, I'm so sorry for the delay. I'm just gonna mute
Okay,
on
hold on.
their
I'm
phone.
gonna put you on speaker. Okay.
Thank you so much for letting me speak. My name is Linda Sapolsky. I was at another meeting with my children and my son, my second grade son got a petition and he got 300 or 300 people in Tiburon to sign the petition in favor of a basketball court or some sort of teen and tween friendly amenity at the Blackie Chapter former sewage waste area. And I'm just kind of, I guess, hoping to advocate for something for teens and tweens in the area. And sorry, I'm just hearing. But yeah, just wanting to voice that, like the teens and tweens, like a basketball court. He had 300 signatures back when we were at the meeting, and he's now close to 500. And this is without doing anything since the initial November 20th meeting. So I think that there's a huge desire for, spaces for teens and tweens to be active and engaged in the community of Tiburon. So I just kind of wanted to put that out there. Thank you.
No, thank you, Linda, for the comments. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thanks for bearing with our technical challenge. Thank you, everybody, for bearing with our technical challenges. Okay, is there any other comments?
Yes, we have Beth.
Is there a way that I'm gonna join? Can you join the conference?
I think if you just join on like a laptop with a speaker, they can speak through that. Like we'll hear them through that because the problem is the speaker in here.
Here. The problem is this with this, however, it's tied in the back because everybody can hear the speaker here on my phone. So either David, if you want to join, I mean, I'm happy to join it. I don't have the.
Just as long as that device has a speaker.
You want to, everybody just bear with us. David is, okay. That's what we probably, that's a great point, Liz. And I didn't put two and two together. So thank you.
This was working fine.
My number's like pushed out. I'm going to get all these 2 a.m. phone calls. Whoa, what's up? You just, no, it should work. Yeah. Thanks, man.
As long as you can like unmute them like you do. Yeah.
Okay.
Hi, my name's Beth and sorry I couldn't be there in person. Can you hear me?
Yep.
I'll keep it quick because of the technical challenges, but I'm very in favor of these mini park projects moving forward. So thank you for proposing options for the town council to take action and decision on. I would just like to highlight that there has just been a lot of authority, a lot of work behind working with the community. And so I hope that that can be repurposed in the new, architectural design market research process that was proposed earlier. And I was also curious who would be involved in being surveyed. As someone who lives downtown, I don't live near those parks, but those are the only, parks that I have in Tiburon. So I was just kind of curious who specifically is surveyed and how, if you don't live right in the vicinity, how you could participate as a resident and taxpayer. That's it. Thank you.
Done? Yeah. Okay, so I'll give a little bit of background on the survey. The survey design or the plan on this was we were meeting with community members, which include Parents for Parks and other people who are all from different areas. And they said, hey, this is great, but gosh, it'd be great if we could include more people to get their thoughts. You can't make a 10 a.m. meeting on a Saturday. So this is the survey we're trying to put in. We're not trying to exclude people from anything, but we're just trying to include the bigger sample of people to provide their comments, particularly people who live in the neighborhood parks, because the mini parks are neighborhood parks. The plan in the park strategic plan is to include other play areas, including something potentially at Blackie's Pasture. And here at Zelensky. So there'll be other parks that everybody can have access to, but we're just trying to be more inclusive of people who live near neighborhood parks, who generally walk to them and do not drive to them as a destination park. Because our hope is that not only will Cypress Hollow will retain its fine quality as a very small half-acre park, but then our also hope is to create play areas at Zelensky Park and other areas and other spaces that we have to make them more destination-like parks that have more ample parking and are not in residential neighborhoods. I hope that's helpful for the commissioners and everybody. Does that make sense? Yes. Okay, David's left.
He went to get his charger, so his
Oh,
phone
so his phone
doesn't
doesn't dial. So
work out.
if you want, we can move to if there's no public, I don't think there's any additional public comment. So we can move to the next informational item, which is pickleball. Mr. Moon.
Yeah, not much of an update here, other than we continue to have conversations with the TPC about a potential partnership in developing a pickleball facility with them. The plan is to come up with a plan that we could present to Post and to town to consider, but it's very much in the formative stages right now.
Do you want to talk about the temp structure or no?
Oh, and we are also continuing to look at cost estimates for covering tennis court at Tether Park to include some pickleball courts there, and that process is still ongoing as well.
Any questions for Mr. Moon or myself? Any comments for those here in chamber? David, is there anybody online who has their hand raised regarding this is pickleball court subcommittee?
Pickleball, I think Beth, that was from the last. Item. I don't see anyone online with their hand up.
All right, any other questions or discussion on that? All right, next, the paddleboard launch subcommittee. Mr. Burr, Ms. Judge.
Well, unless Commissioner Judge wants to add anything, we kind of covered this earlier.
Okay.
Yeah, I would just quickly summarize for people who we were referred to a couple things, but just to explain it. There's a possible site, a potential site that the town will explore at 41 Main. It is water access required, but there's private property. And so it involves like reaching out to a property owner and the Corinthian Yacht Club and we just made the recommendation, the town will do that work. Or the town council, I guess, approve the town doing that work. And then there's another potential site right at Shoreline Park next to the Railroad Museum. That will be on the list of the sites that the town analyzes. And there's two potential sites at Richardson Bay, one at the intersection of San Rafael and Tiburon Boulevard, and one at the Blackies pasture area that they'll look into. Are there any other sites that we missed? That's it, I think.
Well, the beach and ocean, beach and Main Street, right by the library.
Right.
That's the border between Belvedere and Tiburon.
Right, okay, so that's it, that's the summary.
Which interestingly about that spot, we think is outside of the Richardson Bay Audubon Society closed area. I was going through the ordinance and everything like that.
Which area?
The Bramble Beach location.
Oh, so the
That-
San
that
Rafael
spot, the
to
San
Boulevard.
Rafael intersection. From everything, I try to go deep into the ordinance. I think it's an ordinance adopted by Richardson Bay Authority, and so it looks like it's outside of that. So you could
Okay.
you go in the water there and ride around town or over to Sausalito or whatever it might be.
And I had mentioned that one. The one that we didn't mention was the one at the corner of it's behind the post office. It's like the
Yeah,
corner
the beach and Main Street.
of Beach and Main Street. That's
Yeah.
right. You just mentioned it.
That's
Sorry.
okay. It's all-
Thank you. That's it.
Great. Any comments on that?
None online?
Yeah, and I think that I just want to, and thank you guys for bringing that. Stuart mentioned this in our action item. I think it is important, the criteria of parking, ease of access, and how long, if it's open or not with the Richardson Bay closure for 6 months, which is actually some great paddling weather actually, because it's pretty slack and it's not real windy. So I think that was helpful. And then there's going to be other environmental challenges, right? So, and then neighborhood challenges with regards to structures in front on Shoreline Park and things like that. So, all right, great, you guys. Thank you very much for that. Public Swimming Pool Subcommittee. I don't have anything new to report. Do you?
No.
Okay.
Do we need to do public comment on these?
Yeah, well, I just asked if anybody had public comment.
Sorry, I missed that.
It's okay.
No, nothing new.
Oh, good. All right. And so we'll go to the last informational item, the Blackies Pasture, RBSD Ponds and South of Knoll Improvements Subcommittee.
Do you want to present?
Yeah, I could just do the overview.
We probably should have done you guys first. Next time we're going to do you guys first.
Yeah, so we continue to explore ideas for the Lineal Park, getting some input from some key members of neighborhood associations that are adjacent to the park, as well as the Moms for Parks group as well. And the goal here is to ultimately come up with a general idea of amenities in that park and have a day that the general public can participate in exploring those ideas further and brainstorming about others that there may be. We will post that publicly so people will know when that public meeting will happen. But ultimately, the idea is to come up with a plan that we can present to posts and ultimately to town council, where they can take a look at the recommendations and ultimately prioritize themselves on which items they would like to tackle, and the order, whether or not they want to tackle the amenities and then prioritize those amenities that they would like to tackle.
Cool. Any public comments on this subcommittee's items? I think it's what you guys, anything online, David? Yes?
Yes, we do. One moment.
All right. Thank you for figuring out all those pieces. And again, appreciate everybody staying online and working through our technical difficulties here at Chambers. It's not you, it's us.
All right, Beth.
Hi, thank you so much for all of your prep work on this. Sorry, this specific subcommittee is quite complicated, so I was just curious for some advice on more specifics of next steps on how the community can support you all and moving these things forward for this large group of area. It seems very popular, especially too with the sanitation ponds now having grass that's being seeded and those popular petitions around volleyball and basketball.
Yeah, no, thank you for your engagement. I think the immediate action could be to participate in that session that we're going to have open to the public, and then the subsequent post committee meeting where we'll talk about that. You can also participate in that as well. So those would be the two key times that I think would be important for your participation around that.
So probably in our March meeting, you guys would want to, would that be a good time to have more public input and to be
More detailed discussion. I think so, because right now, we've heard from a number of people. We want to hear from more. And we have a pretty good sort of running list of things that can be done fairly easily that we would recommend, we'd want to vet that list with more town input, with more residents input, and then ultimately send that list to bring it here for a vote and send it to town council. And then, yeah. So, and we have heard great ideas. There's a lot of people engaged around adding some features to the parks, and especially the sanitation pond location. And it's actually quite a bit of space. You can do quite a bit there. So we have some residents who have even produced renderings with real size estimates, and you can do quite a bit there. And so there's a lot of possibility.
Was there another public comment? Okay, sorry, I interrupted public comment. So I didn't close public comment either. So that was my bad.
Linda.
Hi, my name is Harrison, and I'm 8 years old. And I hope that we can get a basketball court by the time that I'm 9.
Thank you for your time.
That was really, really proud of my 8-year-old public commenter, because that was hard to do. And yeah, I just wanted to reiterate the, again, I think I spoke at the wrong time earlier because I had hopped on the meeting a little bit late, but just the widespread desire for a basketball court that could be multi-use, like seeing them putting down seed is so disheartening when you see, I'm there every day. I live in Belveron. I see the unused grassy areas, and just seeing where a great court could be, there is no noise, issue there, because right in that spot that I walk every day, all you can hear is the street right next door. So it's not like, a basketball bouncing is going to create any noise complication for anybody enjoying the nature there. Just hoping that, again, my son's 8, that in the more near-term future, he's able to enjoy some sort of amenity, hopefully alongside beach volleyball, in that area that has up till now been a sewage waste treatment facility. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Appreciate the time.
Thank you. I appreciate you and your son. Please let him know. There might be an additional public comment here in chambers.
Final comment. I just want to say thank you to everybody here for all the great work that you're doing. I recognize this is volunteer work and it can get overwhelming, just all the input and ideas. And our group just really appreciates that you are working in earnest on this and trying to advance some of the ideas in the master plan. And just thank you.
Likewise, thank you for your engagement.
Thanks, Jenna, for the comments. Appreciate it. Anything else?
I see none.
Any other discuss on this item? Nope. I will then call this meeting to an end. Thank you very much.